In ancient culture, success in marriage came from blessings. Blessing comes from the heart, and this force gives a happy life. If many people bless at once, there is more happiness. So, 6 secrets in relationships are only possible between close people. So I will disclose them at once. Strength of relationships is increased many times if people have 6 qualities in their relationships. The first quality is ability to accept gifts, to accept something given to you. People often try to give me something, and not always I am ready to accept it. That means the relationships will not go deeper. The second is ability to give. The third is ability to open your heart, to do it right. Often women try to open their hearts to husbands, but do it wrong. And the husbands often cannot listen to it. Ability to accept revelations. You open your heart and you listen. The fifth is ability to feed. And the sixth, ability to eat with love. In ancient culture, close people fed each other with their hands. It was an exchange, and it magnifies close relationships. But what is close relationships and what is not? That is the point of our conversation. Can we make more light in the hole? Please turn on the light in the hole. I cannot see the people. Now I can. Great. I need to have contact with people. This is not a concert. But this is just an introduction. Our today's conversation is more about classifying relationships in this world, and then we will gradually move on. First, we speak about relevant information, most important, and on. The most important is to treat rightly yourself. If a person has relationships with himself, then he can build all other relationships. The person cannot feel right about himself if he has no relationships with God, because we are souls by nature, and the soul is the soul reflects what it sees. It is very important for the person to receive good raising. We receive knowledge from our parents from this world. We see if people lived in different countries, there is different culture. I recently gave lectures online. Now it is possible to do it from home. I associated with 5 cities of Canada and the US. There were listeners from 5 cities. We had a conversation, and there was a question that for a Russian person it is very hard to build relationships with an American. It is hard to receive mutual understanding. And that means that the soul by nature is like a sparkle that lights with the light that was given to it. It has its way to shine, but the light that is directed at her is very important. And the best light is the spiritual light, and it comes from the higher spirituality. These are holy people, blessed with God and God Himself. Relationships with God and yourself are the most important, and they form all other relationships. When you have relationships with God, you can understand yourself, because your soul is lighted by that. And we can understand ourselves deeply thanks to relationships with holiness. How do you think? When do we fully know if we understand ourselves? In which moment? Yes, when the soul leaves the body, then it knows if it knew. Because then the person understands nothing. He thinks that I'm Dr. Torsunov, I am a doctor. But when the soul leaves this body, it is no longer a doctor. It is just the soul that goes into the next life, the next body. And if I were disheartened by my titles and what I had in this life so much that I did not know what I was inside. For example, I did not know that I live forever and that I had past lives. If I do not understand these things, then in the moment of death, the person understands nothing. He does not know how to live on. If the person is disheartened by self-understanding, it always causes his sufferings in any time of life. For example, I suffered much because first I grew well from 12 to 15. I was almost the tallest among my peers. And then they all went taller than me. And because I thought I was this body, this male body that is supposed to be beautiful, I was badly stressed. I started to eat carrots to grow, and I went yellow. At that time there was an outbreak of hepatitis and I was taken to the hospital. And I stopped being yellow because there was no carrot there. But it is funny now, but then at the time it was quite tragic. And the reason was that I mistook myself for the body. Young men often, my sister and my daughter were like that. Young people often tend to, young girls want to lose weight, they fight for their beauty as much as they can. Young men work out all days, and the reason is wrong understanding of yourself, because you can be beautiful when you are young and strong, but if the person makes it a tragedy. One of my close people said that she wanted to have a nose job, and that is crazy. That means that some external understanding becomes the essence of life. This topic is very difficult. Similarly, I am a doctor, but if something happens now and I can no longer be the doctor, what then? I have no life, I suffer. Or I am Russian, but if I get in the US, no one needs me as Russian, and it causes suffering. And so on. You see what I am saying? There is a certain superficial understanding of self. You need to be Russian, you need to be a doctor, but it is not the essence of a human being. Or I'm getting old. Women are often stressed. She used to flirt, and at a certain time she notices that no one responds to that, and that is stress. She sees that her life is broken, but you are not this body. You should not be bothered about that. You should not associate yourself with the one who flirts all her life. But what is there to do then? What should I do then? Relationships with this world are always based on our understanding of things. This understanding allows a person to be stronger in relationships and to receive happiness. For example, there is blind confidence, like blind bravery, or a warrior is brave because he knows how to act in the fight, or he's brave because he is blind. These are different kinds of bravery. Knowledge allows the person to be happy in his life. Knowledge about relationships is the most important one. Relationships with yourself, with God, with everything in this world. That is major knowledge. There is nothing higher. And it is also the most complicated knowledge. The things I'm telling you now may seem unworthy of your intention. Many people think, why do I need to be told that I should not think that I'm beautiful? I am not telling you that. I am talking about relationships. For example, if I look into the mirror, it does not mean that I'm the reflection. If I think I'm that reflection, that is crazy. Similarly, the soul is reflected in this body, but it is just the reflection, and it changes as the body ages. But if a person is used to the reflection he used to see, then afterwards he gets stressed. Similarly, a person had some bad injury. Does it mean the end of life? Some people think so. Or a person lost his sexual potency. Is his life over? It goes on, but it is a bit worse. Most people think that because they are attached to these functions, to their body. They think that is the basis of their life, and that is illusion. This illusion will give its fruits, because there is this law. The more a person is attached to some function of his body, the more suffering he receives from it. And this law works through egoism. We have it in our mind. For example, I want to have sex badly, and egoism goes there, my genitalia become very sensitive, and impotence is developed, male or female. You see what I'm saying? The more attached I am, or I'm attached to my skin, I want to be beautiful. It's a necessary desire for any woman, but if it is too strong, the skin goes sensitive and painful, and no creams can be applied. So if you see your reflection painfully, then you get a disease. If I'm badly attached to what I see before me, that means that's an illness, incorrect understanding of self. The reflection body is important, we must take care about it, but if a man thinks that male power is the basis of his life, I am a Schwarzenegger, well, okay, wait another 15 years and you will see that you can no longer be Schwarzenegger, because your body is young no longer and it cannot be as strong. It ages. And then you have to use steroids to keep up the results, the shape, and there are diseases. You become a sick person. Or these singers that try to be young and 70, that is ridiculous when you see that. It is obvious that the person suffers. To seem beautiful when there is nothing to show. All these skin lifts and everything, that is ridiculous. Accept your body as it is. Before the person started to build relationships with God, he cannot see the divinity, depth and purity of his nature. He cannot realize these in himself, because he looks at himself through the eyes of society. For example, I am a sinner for now, but then you will teach sinning, or you will be an old singer and you will have different songs. You should not sing love songs at 70 and dance to it. Something more thoughtful. It all depends on your attitude of yourself. And it is the force that affects relationships with other people. A person who is unsatisfied in himself cannot give happiness to anyone. Inner satisfaction does not depend on us. It again depends on relationships with God. Listen to me attentively now. This is important. What usually people do not know is important. And usually they do not know that in our body there are two souls. One is called the soul or self, and the second the super soul. And the super soul is the embassy of God in our body. The Vedas call it Paramatma. Atma means soul and Para, supreme. Paramatma. And this super soul gives the soul ability to contact this world. By nature, the soul is spiritual. It is not connected to this world directly. It is only connected through God. For example, when we eat, we swallow food. Do we control what goes on in our digestive system? Raise your hands. Who do? It is all digested and absorbed. No, no one knows what happens there. We only have a clue when we drop it. At some point we receive a signal that we need to remove this from the body. But we do it unconsciously. We do not know where this signal comes from. I usually give examples. After lunch, I rest for 15 or 20 minutes always, and I ask my wife to tell me when to get up. But once, there was something unusual. I heard, "It's time to get up." I got up, I thanked my wife for waking me, and she said that she forgot to do it. I asked if she was joking, and she said no. Who did then? Physiologists say that this is reflex, but the Vedas explain it differently. They say that there is the super soul, that is the memory. It wakes us up, it puts us to sleep, and it controls all functions in our body. Feeling of happiness comes from our soul. Is it our feeling, happiness? Does it belong to us? I became happy. If you are happy, always be happy. Why don't you? Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes not. Why is it like that? Because it does not depend on me. Happiness comes from inside, it comes from someone. There is someone that makes us happy. Did anyone feel it? Suddenly, happiness in your heart. Everyone did, didn't you? A moment and you're happy in your heart, suddenly. Which ones of you cannot get married? Did you have this in your life, that you told yourself, I will marry anyway? No? This young woman with a braid. Did you tell yourself, I will get married, no matter what? And who did? Raise your hand. You did. You proved it. How can you prove something to yourself? No matter what. We think that we speak to ourselves, but just consider it. This is crazy to say something to yourself. When a child is hurt and there is no one, he does not cry, but once his mother comes, he cries. A person cannot do something to himself. We do it to someone. And when you say you're going to get married anyway, you say it to God, in our heart, to the super soul. We have deep relationships, and they are so deep that we do not even notice them. Once I slept, and it was not so nice. My arm was up and my heart stopped or something. I stopped breathing, in short. And I found myself sitting on the bed, breathing quickly. And in that moment I woke up and I found myself seated, and the first thought was, who seated me and who breathes right now? I was asleep. When I sleep, I do not breathe. But someone got me seated, I woke up and I found that my body started to breathe. Do you feel that there is someone inside? We guess about it. And whom do we tell that we're going to be fine? Or we feel like we're going to be fine? Whom does it come from? Who never doubted that you were going to marry? And it happened like that. It was okay, yes? And why didn't you doubt? Who gives doubt? How did you know that you were going to get married for sure? You had this feeling inside. And it came from God, but you did not think about it. And now, who's always thought it would be difficult to get married? How did you know that? Just the same. And there are no secrets in this world. For example, knowledge of future and past is no secret at all. For example, I do not need to read news about war. I can focus in my heart and understand what is going on there. And you can do the same if you practice. As I have been doing it my whole life, I study human psyche, it is easy for me to do it. It is easy because in our heart there is knowledge about everything. This knowledge does not belong to me. The soul reflects the knowledge, and it needs to build relationships with the one who gives knowledge. What is doubt? Why does a person doubt? Doubt is when relationships are disrupted. And what is faith? Faith is when there are relationships with the one in your heart. What is love? Love is sanctions that come from there. Can you force yourself to love? No. This is permission that comes from inside. Love comes unexpectedly, and every evening is at once so wonderful. And you sing, "Oh heart, you are so restless. Oh heart, it is so wonderful to live." The feelings fill you from the inside, and happiness comes. This morning I prayed, and I felt joy from this meeting. I did not know that balloons were going to fall on me, but I knew something nice was going to happen. I did not know what exactly, because Tatiana Tarasova is famous for surprises. She always makes something new. Today there were 2 events. I wanted to go out to a vegetarian restaurant to eat, right in my sweatpants, just like I was at home. But everyone told me, "Well, you should dress up, you are an important person." And I knew something was wrong. My heart was telling me. Of course, it wasn't me. God knew everything, what was going on. I entered that restaurant, and there were about 100 people, and a wedding. At once they gave me a bouquet to congratulate the bride, and it brings happiness in your life when such surprises happen. But knowledge about these things is given by God in our heart. But we do not know that, and therefore suffer. There are 2 ways to build relationships with God. Either you develop them yourself or with an elder. Because your elder, your senior, is the representative of God in your heart. Your seniors tell you what you should know, what you need to know. Some people say that I tell them what they need to know, but I am unaware. I just say what my heart tells me. And as my heart tells right, then God in your heart demands it from God in my heart. Well, in fact, there is only one God, so he demands it from himself. Here is a simple, funny example. Which ones of you saw me in your dream, and I told you something? You here, what did I tell you? You had a feeling, and is there someone I spoke to in a dream? What did I tell you? To pray. But I did not do it. Honestly, I did not meditate on you at night. I did not make you do something. One time in my life I tried to do it, and I was badly punished. Here is the story. I read a lot of mystical books. I was 17, and I learned how to dream consciously, to be self-aware in my sleep. First I seated, then I stood up, then I jumped, and then I started to fly in my dream. It all happened in my subtle body, as I realized later. First it was real, but then I realized that was my subtle body. Later I could go through doors, then I flew outside, and it was 9 floors high. Then I flew into neighbors' apartments. I watched my neighbors, my friends. Later I told them about that, and they were really surprised. Then I flew into an apartment, and there was an old lady. It was evening, she was asleep, my neighbor. I scared her. She crossed me, and I lost my abilities. I could no longer do it. So, as you dreamed about me quite recently, I couldn't do it at that moment. That is your super soul, God in your heart. showed before you in a familiar appearance to give you knowledge. You saw your God in the form that you believe in. It always happens like this. When a person meets his senior, if in his heart there is some desire, then the senior gives him knowledge. We have already blessed you. I thought that you were in this hall. Let us bless you again. Wedding, wedding, was singing and dancing. And there was not enough place for this wedding. The sky and the earth were not enough.
Горько не надо, как бы. Спасибо, спасибо, садитесь.
Your attitude about yourself is very important, and you must know that you are a part of the one who is in your heart, who leads you in your life. If the person does not understand that, he lives in fear. Fear, anxiety indicate lack of relationships with your heart. Often people speak to themselves, but actually they do it to God. It is said often, establish relationships with yourself, but these are relationships with God. If you try to love yourself, it is just self-suggestion. For example, I am a very good person, and Oleg Gennadievich is a very good person. Do I feel better about myself? Yes, I do, but it is external. Because you can only really feel well if you perform your duty. For example, my duty is to give this lecture, to give you knowledge. I give you knowledge that belongs to God. If I do it right, I feel happiness in my heart afterwards. And if I do it wrong, I am worried. And that is what is called opinion about yourself. It is produced by conscious or super soul. You can call it God in your heart also. For example, God in my heart tells me now that I won't be able to give lecture if I am taking pictures of. I do not mind, it's okay, but this is what I felt. In other words, it is useless to make something of yourself, because God's attitude to me has already formed, and it will change if I change my view of life. Sometimes it happens through pain. Sometimes it hurts badly to know that you do something wrong. Your attitude to yourself, your relationships with God are the most important. They affect everything else. And an unsatisfied person, the one who does not feel he has mission in his heart for other people, who has no faith in God, feels no protection from God, he does not feel that he is important to God and that God is important to him. He cannot fully give happiness to another person, even though he may try. It is very important to establish relationships with God in your heart daily. And this process is called prayer. Praying means that you want relationships with God. The next type of relationships that is also important, it comes second, that is relationships with saints, seniors, and spiritual relationships in general. We now have spiritual relationships because we discuss exalted topics. These relationships give development to a person, they change his fate and view of the world. In fact, these relationships with seniors, with mentors, and spiritual relationships in general are so important that without them no development is possible. In our culture, there are no relationships like that. Raise your hands who have mentors here. There are quite few people, but most people have no inner possibility to receive knowledge. Mostly they try to get it from the outside, but the knowledge from inside either comes from fate or from God. Our fate usually leads us astray, and God tells us the truth. An experienced person feels the difference between knowledge that comes from fate and from knowledge. The first one is a burning knowledge. You feel like you need to get a house. If it comes from God, this knowledge is calm and unobtrusive. It's time to buy a house. Okay, there is time to choose. When it comes from your fate, it's burning. I need to buy a house, I need to buy a house. It is unbearable. If the person has this burning feeling, desire inside, that is unfavorable. That usually leads to trouble. Knowledge from God is strong, calm and soft by nature. It's time to buy the house. Okay, let's choose. Do you like this one? We need to buy a house quickly. There is nothing like that. Let's take a loan, 5, 10, 20 years long. No, nothing like that. God also gives you authority. You need a house and you have opportunity to buy it. But if the person wants to do it himself and he has a burning desire in his heart, it usually gives suffering later. Feelings from your fate are dangerous. Mother, I want to marry this man. Calm down. Think it over. I've already decided. My mother used to tell me about deceptive love, and she only wasted words. I did not listen to her. Oh, mother, you were so right. My dear mother, I had so much fun, but I met him to my misfortune. Oh, what did I? Relationships with seniors are important. Mother and daughter have similar fates, and the mother knows where there are troubles. She can feel it. And if the daughter does not listen, then she will get in trouble. Conscious speaks to us through our seniors. A senior is the one who has relationships with God. A mother that has no relationships with God, a spiritually undeveloped person, cannot give good advice. Therefore, relationships with the seniors give protection, change your life. You need someone senior in your life. That is a necessity. There are two types of such relationships. The first is heartly relationships, when I believe in my senior, and the second type is listening. Listening changes your life, and your view of the world is developed. 25 years ago, when I met spiritual culture, I started to listen to lectures, and I still do daily. The next type is social relationships. You must have a clear understanding of how to relate to different people in society. There are people in the mode of goodness who strive for self-improvement. People in the mode of passion want material development, they want to be wealthy. And there are people in the mode of ignorance who want independence and personal success. You must treat differently these three kinds of people. If you don't, you will suffer, and your life will be unlucky. It just won't work in your life. There are going to be difficulties. For example, if a person builds close relationships with ignorant people, he loses himself and destroys his life. Close relationships with passionate people make you dependent, and close relationships with goodness people give you happiness and perfection. The next type of relationships is very important. These are close relationships or relatives. Our fate, karma, comes to us through these people. The life of these newlyweds entered a new phase, a deep phase. When their fate becomes tight, it becomes very deep and strong. If you do not pay attention to your relationships, and by that I mean to accept and to forgive many things from your spouse. If you do not do it, there will be suffering. Often people want to use each other, they do not want to accept and forgive, they do not want to give. Giving, in fact, means accepting flaws of your close person, allowing him to be as he is, understanding that his flaws are his sufferings and not his desire to torment you. People have flaws because they suffer. If a person has no flaws and he does not suffer, then he brings happiness. But if I realize that my spouse causes me problems unconsciously and he suffers because of it himself, then I forgive him. It is easier for me to live with him. It is very important in family relationships. If you have no knowledge about it, life becomes unbearable. Which ones of you have unbearable family life right now? That means that you do not know how to build relationships. And that is the whole problem. Nothing else. There are certain rules, we are going to discuss them today, some basics, and that will relieve your sufferings at once. The next are business relationships, or the ones at work. They give material development. The person is stable and he has good position in society. And also there are relationships with nature in this world. They give harmony and peace. If a person has good relationships with this world, he has harmony and peace in his heart, and also health. There are three levels of relationships depth. The deepest and most traumatic relationships are in the family, with relatives. Second come less traumatic relationships are business relationships, but also they are quite deep and hurting. And the third type is light relationships, like with your friends. These relationships are not quite light, they can be deep, but karma is light. Friends can easily forgive you and accept, listen to you. It is easy with them. It is much harder for spouses, with children. Relationships with friends are easier to make. Usually people gather together, friends, and they talk about exalted life, about elevated relationships. But then they come back home and argue.
Говорят, вы меня не понимаете, вот
And they
там
say,
меня
you
понимают,
do not
а здесь
understand
меня не
me.
понимают.
My friends understand
Почему так
me, but
происходит?
not you.
Потому что
It
дружеские
happens so
отношения имеют
because
легкую природу, там легче
friendly
быть возвышенным.
relationships are light and
А
it is
семейные
easier to
отношения
be
имеют
elevated
тяжелую,
there.
глубокую природу, там
And
тяжелее
family
быть
relationships
возвышенным.
have
Настоящая
heavy karma
возвышенность
and
человека
it is hard
проявляется
to
именно
be
в
good
семейной
there.
жизни. Если в
True
семейных
identity
близких
reveals
отношениях
in
человек
family
возвышен, он может быть
relationships.
наставником
If the
по-настоящему
person
другим
is
людям.
elevated in his family, then he can be a mentor to other people.
Также существуют внешние и
Also,
внутренние
there are
отношения между
external
людьми.
and internal
Внешние
relationships between
означает
people.
обычные отношения.
External
Вот
mean
обычно мы
normal
строим отношения, это
relationships.
все внешние отношения.
When we build
Внутренние отношения
relationships
строятся во
normally,
время
they are
молитвы. Когда человек
external.
прощает, просит
But when you
прощения,
pray, when you forgive
сердце
and ask for
устанавливает
forgiveness,
связь с другим человеком.
this is inner relationships. You build connection
Веда
in your
объясняет,
heart.
что сердце человека
The
это
Vedas
как
say
корень
that
отношений.
human heart
Корень имеет
is the
веточки.
root of relationships.
Зуд – это
Roots
родственники.
coming into your
Все вот
heart
корешки –
are
это родственники
relatives.
наши.
All these
Если какой-то
pieces
корешок
are your
всасывает
relatives.
воду или
If
счастье,
one of the roots
то
absorbs
это всё
water or
приходит ко мне
happiness, it all comes to
обязательно.
you, into
Да?
your heart.
и наоборот,
And
допустим,
the other way around. For
ребенку,
example, a child has
тяжелая
bad
судьба,
karma
что-то
and
плохое
something bad is
должно
supposed to
произойти, у мамы
happen.
в сердце
And
возникает
his mother
трудность.
is troubled
Что
in
это
her
значит?
heart.
Значит, её
That
счастье,
means
энергия
that
счастья
her
дается ребенку.
happiness is passed on
Иногда
to
эта
the child.
трудность, она
Sometimes
преодолимая,
this
а
trouble
иногда
can
сердце
be overcome,
ноет, и она
but
чувствует, что не
sometimes
может ничего
heart
сделать с
aches
этой
and
ситуацией.
the mother
Тогда
feels
она
she can
начинает
do
волноваться.
nothing. Then she
Волноваться
gets
означает,
worried.
антенка
That
дергается,
means that
хочет
she
требовать
is
счастья
anxious and
от
she wants
родственников.
happiness from the relatives.
Но у родственников у всех
But
общая
the
энергия
relatives
кармы.
have common
У них нет
karma.
лишнего счастья. Они
There is no
лишь
extra
незначительно могут
happiness.
помочь друг
They
другу, за
can only
исключением той
help a
ситуации,
little
когда
to you,
кто-то из родственников
excepting
имеет
a
отношения с
case
Богом.
when one of the
молится,
relatives
занимается
has
духовной
relationships
практикой.
with God,
Когда
meaning
человек
he
молится,
prays and
занимается
has
духовной
spiritual
практикой, то
practice.
через него
In this
удача
case, through
приходит в
that
жизнь
person,
всех родственников.
fortune comes into lives of all
Причем,
relatives.
даже если какой-то родственник
Furthermore,
жил
if
давно,
some relative lived a long time ago,
но вы являетесь его родственником, он до сих пор духовной практикой
you are
занимается
his
уже в
relative
следующей
and
жизни,
he still
является
does
вашей
spiritual
удачей.
practice in his next life, he is
Вот у
your
вас
good
такая есть
fortune.
ситуация, девушка на первом ряду.
You have it,
Да, у вас есть
this
такой
girl
родственник,
on the
который вам
front
несет
row.
удачу. Я это
You
вижу.
have a relative who gives you luck, fortune.
Когда дети так раз
When
реагируют
babies react like that is confirmation.
через детей,
God
через
acts
предметы,
through
через
babies,
старых
old
людей.
people, and some subjects.
Сразу всем захотелось, а мне скажите, да?
Everyone wants to know now if they have it.
Таким образом, сердце является
Heart
как
is
резервуаром
the
счастья,
reservoir
а
of
отношения
happiness,
со всеми
and
родственниками,
relationships with
они
all
забирают это
relatives
счастье из нашей
take
жизни,
this happiness
особенно
from
когда у
our life,
родственников трудности в
especially
жизни.
when
У
the
какого-то
relatives have
родственника
some
трудности,
difficulties.
все родственники от этого
If one is
страдают.
in trouble, all
Все
the
отдают ему
relatives
счастье
suffer
свое.
and
Если
share
каждый из
their
них
happiness
начинает
with him.
строить отношения с источником счастья,
But
с
if
Богом,
each one of
то
them
тогда
starts to
страдания
have relationships
заканчиваются.
with
Потому
God,
что страдание
then
означает всего лишь
sufferings
одну
are
вещь.
over,
Не
because
хватает счастья.
suffering only means lack of
Часто люди
happiness.
скупо просто страдают,
People
мучаются, не
often are
понимая,
misers.
что надо просто в это время
They
молиться.
do not know
Страдания
that
нет
they
смысла,
must
есть смысл
just
только
pray
молитвы.
instead of suffering.
Когда человек молится, он
When the
устанавливает
person
отношения
prays,
с
he
источником
establishes
счастья,
relationships with the
наполняет
source of
счастьем всю среду,
happiness.
в которой он
He
находится.
fills with happiness all his
И
environment.
происходит три фазы.
And there are
Вот,
three
допустим,
phases.
Ну, какое страдание
For
вы
example,
выбираете?
what suffering do you choose?
Ну, поднимите руку, у кого сейчас страдания?
Raise your
Какое
hands,
страдание
those who
родственников вы
suffer.
выбираете? У кого-то
Relatives
родственники
of
страдают.
yours suffer
Алкоголизм. Вот вы
alcoholism.
выбираете такое,
You
да?
pick this.
Вы молитесь.
You pray.
Первая стадия развития.
The
Вы
first stage
успокаиваетесь по
is
отношению
you
к родственникам, которые
become calm
страдают алкоголизмом.
about
Это
your
значит, что у
alcoholic
вас хватает
relative.
силы победить его
That
судьбу.
means that you
Вы
have
успокаиваетесь,
strength
вы
to
знаете,
overcome
всё
his
будет
fate.
хорошо, с
You
его
are calm,
алкоголизмом.
you know
Не
that
надо
everything is
волноваться
going
на
to
этом
be
всё.
fine with
Всё
him.
решится.
It will all
Вторая
resolve.
стадия. Из
The
энергии
second
счастья
stage,
перетекать начинает между
energy
вами
of
всё
happiness
больше,
flows
перетекает
between
к
you.
нему.
Your
Человек
relative
наполняется энергией
receives
счастья, человек
happiness,
пьёт,
he is
потому что не
filled with
хватает
it.
счастья.
Drinking means lack of happiness.
Не хватает счастья. Вот. Энергия счастья перетекает к нему.
Energy of happiness flows to your relative, and the next stage, he feels that it is easier to live. And in that moment, also his conscience is awakened, and he realizes that drinking is not so great. First he feels happy, and then he receives knowledge. It is always like this with the energy of God, with happiness. First there is happiness and calmness. Your relative is calm. It does not feel like happiness first because of alcoholism. It is just easier for him to live. And then knowledge comes and the person starts to consider the way he lives. That's conscious. And then there is suffering. He wants to live differently, but he cannot. Then he changes, and finally victory. And it all can be done because you pray and you transmit the energy of happiness. Prayer is always connection. Here is an example. Well, let's say the newly wedded. Please turn to your wife and tell her quickly, fast. Concentrate on the sound and just say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Listen to your voice. I love you, I love you. Do it. Concentrate on the sound, listen to your words attentively. Did you get it? The wife? Not so much. Now, remember her in your heart. Do not look at her. And remember the first time you met. Now, turn to her and say one time, I love you. First you remember the first time you met. Do not rush. Now, look at her and say, did you feel it? Yes, you see, she turned red. I feel that she got this loving feeling. I love you. That is feeling. You say with feeling. That means that it comes from the heart. A feeling comes from memory, and it comes from God. Why did they feel so well when they first met? Because God joined them. And when the person remembers it, then he can put into words. First we remember relationships, and when we say, that is prayer. You do not just babble, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's useless. You must remember. You must remember how you visited a holy place. You must remember your mentor. You must remember an icon that made you happy. You must remember spiritual, inspiring music. You must remember spiritual festivals, holidays, anything that's connected to your relationships with God. And then you pray, and it gives connection to God, not simple babbling. It only works when you remember, and then you say, you remember and you say, like that. Do not rush. And when there is connection, the root receives water, and the whole tree is fed, and you become a guardian angel for all people around you. This is it. Lecture on relationships is over. We can go home. I told you the most important thing. Well, okay, let's go on. You need some explanations. There are inner relationships with this world. They come from heart and God. If a person does not pray, there are no relationships. Close your eyes now. Remember your close person. It must happen fast. Open your eyes. There are 3 options. The first, you have negative memories. That means bad relationships. There are some bad feelings in your hearts. There is much work to be done and you suffer. The second option is bright, clear memory, and that means you have relationships and love. The third option, you remember nothing. You try to, so there are no relationships in your hearts. It is all just external, some enjoyment, some pleasure, many things, but your hearts are empty. And that means there are no relationships. Empty, useless life, and then bitter tears when he is gone. Or, as an option, just emptiness. So, external relationships depend on the inner. If there are no inner, external relationships make no sense. For example, you are trying to get a job. You saw people there. You come back home, pray for them and wish them happiness. Go back there, smile with the memories of wishing happiness, and you will at once be welcomed there from the first day of work. Share your smile, and it will come back to you many, many times. And then, for sure, the clouds will start to dance. Is it so? Smile means what comes from the heart, and there must be something in your heart to give it. In general, there are 3 types of relationships. We discuss different classifications of relationships now. There are relationships with dislike, which also are superiority relationships or humiliation. A person has strength. It comes from past actions. If the person did many good in his past, then he becomes strong in this life. He has certain strength from birth. It can be different. It can be force of beauty or physical force, force of memory, ability to convince people. Nice speech is also a power. Also high position in life. The person can be high in society. He has this power. Also, there is a force of education. There is ability to discover. There are different ingenious manifestations in different arts. It all comes from birth, from his past actions. A person can develop these things, but it is not as well as in people who had it from birth. You can make your memory better, but it is not as good as in people who were born like that. When I was a student, I had to read something 5 times to memorize something. And I had a friend who read it once and knew it all by heart at once. He could recite it. And he remembered everything he read. He was a walking encyclopedia. He was a straight A student. And he never really studied. He just enjoyed his life. He associated with his friends. He was a happy student. And I studied hard like a fool, and I only had C's. And he had the strength from his past life. That is piety. When the person builds relationships with other people relying on his force, like you are a failure and I am a straight A student, These are relationships of dislike, superiority, or humiliation. You have less piety, you are humiliated. You have more piety, you are superior. There are no relationships in this case. That is ignorance. And you should stay away from relationships like that. If someone thinks he is better than you must stay away from him and wish him happiness in your heart. Not like you tell him, I wish you happiness and go away from here. You must really wish him happiness, but you keep distance. Such person may be your boss or your senior. Then you must perform your duties before him, but still keep distance. Where does a feeling of superiority come from in relationships, or a feeling of dislike? It's the same, but it manifests differently. Yes, it comes from inner undevelopment. There are 4 categories of people. The first is when one does not see personality at all. He only sees labels. A beautiful girl, an unpretty girl, a serious man or unserious, young, old, a child, a grown up. These are just labels. Employee and boss. These are labels, and this is all there is seen. If I'm your boss, I am above you, and you are not my peer. What is deeper understanding of personality? There are business relationships. I am senior in these relationships and I advise you, I can be strict and I can punish you, but there also are different relationships. I respect you deeply because I see your brilliant qualities. I see you as a person. Do you understand what I'm talking about? But if you have no respect for other person's qualities, pray to God to open these qualities to you. That means you are undeveloped and you cannot see. Every single person has deep qualities. Sometimes a person does not accept deep qualities in himself. That means ignorance. For example, a person is kind, but he won't behave kindly. That means he is ignorant. You must feel he is kind, but you do not discuss it. You just stay away from him a little and he will think well about you. But you must not establish relationships with him. He has different ideas in life. He wants to prove his point. Dislike relationships or relationships with superiority and humiliation are ignorant. There is no happiness there, and you should never have close relationships like that. Are there any questions? For example, ignorant relationships with your boss and relatives. I'm your boss, I am prettier, I make more money, you are undeserving of me. This aplomb, did you feel it? That means our relationships can be in the future, we strive for them. Once there is ignorance between us, and, for example, we are spouses, that means that in our home there is lack of what lacks? There is no God in our home. I do not argue with you. So, there is a lack of God in your relationships. God is love. Like the sun. It's a disk and it has rays. Rays is the energy of sun. It is its love. And similarly, God is a personality and He shines with love. Love belongs to Him. That's His integral part. We also have love, but it is reflected, just like in a mirror, light is reflected. The mirror can reflect bright and dirty light, and similarly, if a person associates with criminals, he becomes a criminal. If he associates with God, he becomes a saint. We can also have love in our heart, or not. It depends on what we reflect and whom we associate with. Is it clear? We are just like God, but we are small. We have no strength of our own, and relationships with God make us strong. Our tiny sparkle, our soul becomes happy and it can implement its plans in life. Which ones of you are bothered now about relationships with dislike, with someone? Tell me. Do we have another microphone? Let us talk, we need practical experience, otherwise this lecture is going to be very boring. The girl in the front row. My boss, she is a woman and she dislikes me badly, although I have no bad feelings for her. And she constantly pecks me on one point. What do I do? How can I fight it off? I am constantly pressed at work. Yes, it is so. You must divide this situation into two parts. First, understanding of how to think about your boss, and the second part is your fate. Who torments you now? I am not tormented. Yes, you are. Who does it? I do not know. Your fate torments you. You have such a period in your life, and your fate found a leverage to torment you. It is always like that. Your fate comes through some person. How can you suffer less? You must build correct relationships. Is it good to make you work? You do not know. I tell you that it is. A senior can make his inferior work. The point is that my work is fine. She constantly gets at me as a woman to another woman. I'm also a manager and I'm embarrassed when in front of my employees I hear something about my skirt or my shoes or my behavior. Thank you. That's great. I like how it goes. You revealed the topic. What do you do? There is no way out. Who thinks there is a way out? What is there to do? Please pass the microphone. There is a reason for each person in our life, and we must be grateful for making us better. You must find good in bad.
Да, пожалуйста, вот женщина
Yes,
знает,
please.
она уже была на лекции.
The woman here knows. She's already been to lectures.
Так, вот мне больше интересно услышать ваше мнение.
I would like to hear you. I think that when you are humiliated, once I used your advice, I said, I have nothing personal to you, I respect you, and I only disagree with you in work matters. And then my boss stood up and said that he respected me. That's difficult. Obviously, that is. I do not know why these things happen. I perform my duties well, but then these things still happen. From my experience, I pray for that person The first thing you must understand is that these are ignorant relationships. That means you must learn to be humble to ignorant people. Often we assess people in the wrong way. For example, if a person is behaving ignorantly, and I think that he is in the mode of goodness, the result is that I expect goodness behavior, and he behaves ignorantly. What's the result? There is pain as a result. You expect something. Look in your heart. Yes, you do. And you just don't. She is your senior, perform your duties. When she humiliates you, what you said was right. When someone humiliates you, that means that you must work your karma off. That is your fate. What do? You will be hurt at once. But when I am humiliated, what do? I must respond the way I can, but then I go home, I wish happiness to that person, I forgive and ask for forgiveness. That is my amount of work. If this was not my work, for example, someone tells me now, why do you show off here, you speaky guy? Someone may just say that to me right now. There are two options. First, I agree with him and I say, yes, thank you for your advice, I will continue my lecture. That means I am not hurt, I do not respond, that does not bother me. You see that? And the second option, I get hurt, I argue, I prove that I am good, or I scold him, or I ask someone to throw him out of this hole. The second option means that there is something in it. If I am hurt, then there is some truthfulness in it. That means I am the way he says. I have qualities that he named deep in my heart. You think it's wrong? I disagree with her remarks on my account. She makes personal remarks. She is fine with me professionally. That means you must not be bothered. I do not know what I can do not to pay attention to these things. These words hurt. But being a woman or because of my character, I am bothered. I do not know how to accept it. Please understand that there are three types of relationships. There are relationships of seniors and minors, and the senior can disregard opinion of his minors. There are relationships of peers when you are just neutral. A person makes a mistake and he is allowed to. And there are relationships of a minor to his senior. And you disregard what he does, you just respect him as your senior. We are discussing your pain now. The Vedas say that if there is pain in your heart, then it always comes for a reason. That means there is something to work on inside you. Pain indicates your amount of work. Pain is lack of happiness. That means you must work. It is work with your heart. You must go home and pray, wish happiness, forgive and ask for forgiveness, and then you become calm in your heart. When it repeats, it is easier for you, and easier and easier. And then comes the time when she tells you that your skirt is wrong. You smile back at her and you say, "Yes, I am all like this." And now she has to start thinking. It appears that her remark came back to her. It was reflected from you like from a mirror. But always when there is pain in your heart, that indicates there is something to work on. But we are not always to respond well. Sometimes we have bad reaction in our mind when we get resentful. Sometimes we respond in bad words that show our pain. And sometimes we respond badly in action. For example, you hit her with something. The best is just to get resentful. You do wrong in your thoughts, because if you answer and there are words, there will be a chain reaction that will lead to you losing job. The fetus wins, and it is even worse to hurt her, to hit her with a folder or something. Then you can even be sued, and if she accidentally dies, it's a felony. Your punishment depends on the way you react. It is best to react in a less painful way. You must try. You must endeavor to do it. Then you go home, you pray, you forgive, you ask for forgiveness. If there is pain, you must establish good relationships in your heart. But there is another problem that you do not know. And it is called distance. There are three types of relationships: close relationships, business relationships, and neutral. With an ignorant person, you should not even have business relationships. You must only relate to his position. She is your boss and you associate with her. You follow her orders, but As a person, she must simply be absent for you, from the point of view of interaction, but not from the point of view of the soul. You must wish her happiness daily, but at the same time, you should not see her as a personality. She does not exist for you, and that will get her thinking. When the person makes right decision in relationships, then it makes people start to think. For example, she asks you, "Why are you wearing this skirt again?" She is building close, ignorant relationships with you, and you respond nothing, as if you did not notice it. You just go on with your business as if she does not exist. You had an emotional reaction, but you are firmly neutral in your relationships. Not business, but neutral, because she is not deserving of business relationships. Your boss has no right to behave like that with you, with her employee. And as a result, she has no feedback. If there is superiority, there must be humiliation. If you are not humiliated, then she receives the same thing that you receive normally. And she will think twice before doing this to you again. But if at the same time you think positively of her in your heart, and you greet her at lunch and you smile to her, then she will start to think even more. Because before she saw a competitor in you, and then she thinks that it is better to leave you alone, because when seeing kindness in your heart, she will see your spiritual superiority and she will be more careful with you. In any case, the problem is just inside you. Before you put your heart into place and you have good feelings for her in your heart, you will not be able to overcome this situation, because this is your exam. Why is it your exam? Because you are prone to be quite tough with people, uncompromising, arrogant, and you respond to these qualities right now. I told you this with love. Before saying that, I gave you much warmness in your heart so that you could accept it, because I have no claims to you. Is this topic clear to you now? There are ignorant relationships. You must be neutral to ignorant people, and that means neither good nor bad, neither warm nor cold. You are neutral. Some people think that they have no right to be neutral. Do you know what a well-bred person is? It is the one who has right for all types of relationships. For example, there is a well-bred person, and someone asks him, "How is your baldness doing?" But he is well-bred. He looks back, and in that moment he establishes neutral relationships. He just turns away and goes on with his business. Is it respectful? This is good breeding. It is manifested in establishing relationships. He assessed that person and allowed him to be stupid. Because if he did not, he would have become stupid himself. Well-bred people allow everyone around to be stupid. This is neutral position.
Есть деловая позиция.
There also is a business position. That means there are common duties. In business relationships, people can push each other, but there must be no personal humiliation. You must allow your partner push you, or you should push yourself, because some people are idle by nature, but you are his boss, and you tell her, "Why are you late for work? You must be on time." Was this pushing rude? No, it was simply a shake-up. You shake the person up by your words so that he came to work earlier. For example, we tell our child, "Go quicker, quicker," and he runs. Is that strictness? No? That is a mild shake-up. That is business relationships. Even with child, in this case, it's business relationships. Close relationships is when you sit your child next to you and ask how he is doing. Close relationships is love. Only energy of love gives possibility to have close relationships, and not some businesses. Did you go to school? That is business relationships. And the child says, "I did," but in fact he did not. These are relationships of superiority. How should you behave with this child? "Mother, why don't you speak to me?" "My dear son, I do not know what is there to talk to you about, because I thought you were supposed to tell me the truth, and you lied, and I do not know what to expect of you, so I do not speak to you." "Mother, but I was joking." "Well, how did I know? How can I tell when you joke?" Do you see it? He tries to establish relationships, but there are no, because he broke the rules. And when you have mutual relationships for a sufficient amount of time, the child starts to respect you and he does not lie anymore. Neutral relationships are also love. Often people cannot have neutral relationships, and there is only one reason for that. Who knows? Who would like to say? Raise your hands, please. Why can't we have neutral relationships? In my opinion, we cannot have neutral relationships because we have no knowledge. It is quite difficult, but when we find out why the person acts this or that way, all our negative emotions go away. Thank you. That is very right. Let's go deeper. What you said was right, but to understand this topic deeper, there is another layer. So here is the next question. Why do not we understand other people? Why cannot we build right relationships, neutral in this case? Because we do not understand ourselves. That is too high. Why did I sin? Because I am not a saint. That is too high. There is a simpler understanding. There is an exact reason for the audience. Well, okay. Maybe it is egoism, desire to show your opinion. This is closer. You want something, you feel like something. Let's listen to another opinion. Yes, but that's right, there is desire to say something. We want to enjoy each other. This is very right. The problem is that there are two energies, opposite energies. There is energy of love and of attachment. Attachment means I want to be loved. This energy always causes suffering. When a person lives and loves, he never suffers and he has no attachments. Being attached does not mean being detached. We are speaking of desire to enjoy. This desire is very strong in us. If I want to enjoy relationships with my boss, then I am attached to her and I have expectations. I expect some behavior from her. But if I serve my boss, in the very beginning, I named 6 types of relationships that solve all kinds of problems. For example, if I have just one type in my heart, I want to give something to my boss, or I want to accept something from her, I want to reveal my sincere thoughts to her, or I just want to give her something tasty. When I had this force in my heart, the boss won't be able to laugh at me. For example, I came and said, I baked some pies, would you like to try it? She has 2 options. Either she does not accept it and she laughs at you, but that is her problem, because you do what you had to and you are protected. Like an ambassador, he is always immune. You are immune to her offenses, at least for that day, because you offered her some food. 6 types of forces that destroy all suffering in relationships. But if you make no attempts or you just said, hello, it means blessing. In Russian, здравствуйте, it is wishing health. If you say this with a feeling, you know what you're saying. You are aware of what you're saying. Or goodbye. Till later, that means meeting again. When people do these things in their hearts, they are protected from ignorance at once. Love always defeats any ignorance. Just give her candies. Can you do it? Do it with love. And that's it, you are protected. But when a person cannot give something or accept, he wants to enjoy relationships. Accepting is also love. When you accept, you do not choose another person. It is also giving. For example, if something gives something to me, what happens to me? Here is a balloon for you. Okay, next, another balloon, next, another balloon. Did something happen? No. Oleg Gennadievich, here is a balloon for you. What does it mean? That means I should look a person in the eye, bless him, thank him. Can you feel it? I gave more than I accepted. It is not so easy to look in the eyes, to smile, to thank. You did not expect it, but he came suddenly, he gave you something, and you must give love back. Thus, even accepting gifts is giving. It is never actually receiving. You invest your force. Naturally, we only want to take. I woke up and everyone is supposed to serve me. This is how our nature works. We want to exploit love. That's ignorance, and that's the way we live. Divinity means that you establish relationships with God in prayer, and in your heart you want to do something. You want to give a balloon, you want to feed someone, or you accept something. Gratitude, smile. That means inner force. Suffering comes when we expect happiness from other people. That is attachment. And as a result, there is suffering. For example, a husband said some unkind words to me. But if I was in the mood of service and I did not expect good words, then there's no problem. Stop bothering me. Well, it's okay. Sit down, have dinner. The woman is in the mood of service and she ignores his offenses. And if she expected good words and he says, "Stop bothering me," she is at once resentment. "I do not want to live with you, we are not compatible." Incompatibility because of expectations. She expected love instead of giving it. You think now, this lecture finishes, I will give love, I will expect nothing, and I will be happy. Try it. It is hard to achieve, because you need force to do it. And force comes from relationships with God. And only a saintly person, spiritually developed, can always serve without expecting a thing. There are different types of relationships. There are external and internal, and there are relationships of dislike, of superiority, and you should behave neutrally. That means expecting nothing from that person. You serve, you give him a candy, you wish him happiness in the morning, so you are immune, you are untouchable to his stupidity. She tells you your skirt is wrong, but you wished her happiness, and as you did, you can just ignore what she says. You have smiled at her and you pay no attention. Because if you use your energy of immunity and say, "But your skirt is always right," with love, that will be a blow below the belt. She will be really upset. You should not do it. You have some strength because you wish her happiness and you should use it right. You should be neutral. Pay no attention to it. Why can we ignore a small dog if it barks at us? Because that is not a crocodile. If it's the crocodile, then you have to pay attention to it. You see that? These humiliation, these pangs are quite meaningless. That is just unsatisfaction, personal satisfaction that causes this behavior. But she does not point a gun at you. If there's the gun, then you should pay attention to it. You should at once protect yourself or ask someone to help you, to take the gun away, to put to prison. But it happens rarely, because there are more types of relationships. Relationships of an aggressor,
доброжелательного человека и нейтральное
of
отношение.
a
Агрессивные
well-wisher
отношения
and
всегда
neutral.
опасны, и всегда на них
Aggressive
нужна
relationships
реакция.
are always
И нужно,
dangerous. You
допустим,
must
на
respond
улице
to
идешь,
them,
девушка идет
protect
поздно
yourself.
вечером,
For example,
и
a young
к тебе
girl
пристает
is walking
человек, желая
down the
изнасиловать.
street
А ты не
late in the
обращаешь внимания,
evening,
да?
and
Даже
there is
пока
a
он тебя
raper,
насилует, тоже не
and you
обращаешь
just
внимания,
ignore
да?
him while
Так
he
возможно,
rapes
нет?
you. Is it possible?
Нет, нужно звать на
No,
помощь, что-то
you
делать.
should cry for
применять
help, you
силу в
should
этом
act,
смысле.
you should use force.
Нужно что-то делать, иначе он поймет,
You
что
must
у
do
него есть санкции
something,
это делать.
otherwise he
Он
will
как бы
think
решит,
that
что
he is
всё нормально,
sanctioned to do this, that it's
всё
okay.
дозволено. Самая лучшая
The
санкция —
best
это молитва.
sanction is prayer.
Если, допустим, на женщину нападают,
If, for example,
то
a
она
woman is
должна знать
attacked,
всегда
then
защитную
she
молитву. Есть такие
must
молитвы,
know
которые призывают
protective
очень большую
prayers.
силу защиты.
There are prayers that summon
В каждой
great protective
религиозной
force.
традиции есть
In
такие,
each
есть
religious tradition,
там Николай
there are
Победоносец, там и так
protectors
далее.
like
Есть в
Nikolai
каждой духовной
Победоносец.
традиции есть
It
такие
is
защитные
always there.
личности,
There
которые
are
дают
personalities
необыкновенную
that
силу,
give
силу
great
могущества
force
защиты, которые
and
сразу
protection,
же срабатывают
and
во время
it
этой
works
молитвы.
at once
И
when
человек,
this
вот он
prayer
хотел
is
изнасиловать, у
chanted.
него руки опускаются, он ничего не может сделать.
And for example, a raper, he can do
Потому
nothing,
что это
he
такая
loses
сила
his
молитвы,
strength,
то есть она обладает
because
огромной силой.
prayers are extremely powerful.
Кто из вас воспользовался в жизни такой
Which ones of
защитную
you
молитву читал в
used
момент
it in their
опасности?
life?
Сработало?
Prayed in
Сработало. Это
danger.
всегда срабатывает.
Did it work? Yes, it did.
Срабатывает.
It does.
Я согласен. Просто мы
I
об
agree
этом не
with
знаем,
you.
и всё.
We just do not know it
Дальше
often.
и так взаимоотношения с неприязнью или превосходством.
Dislike relationships or
Нейтральные
relationships of superiority, neutral relationships.
Взаимоотношения с чувством выгоды или
There
симпатии.
also are relationships with desire
Это
for
страстные отношения.
benefit or liking relationships. These are in the mode of passion.
Из чувства долга.
You can have these relationships out of duty.
Вот
Here is
смотрите,
an
допустим,
example.
Вы работаете вместе. Это
You
глубокие
work
отношения
together.
или нет?
Are these relationships deep?
Вот интересно. Вы вместе
This is
работаете,
interesting.
и
You work
на
together,
основании этого считаете, что у вас
and
глубокие отношения. Дальше
based
что
on
будет?
this you think that you have deep relationships. What happens?
Ну, допустим, вы
Misery.
вместе лепите куколок.
You make dolls
творческий
together. For
процесс.
example, there is
Ему
a
нравится,
creative
допустим,
process,
лепить куколок, и
He
мне
likes
нравится.
to make
И
dolls,
на основании
and
этого
me
мы друг
too.
друга любим.
and we love each
Является ли
other
это
for that.
основанием для того,
Is
чтобы нам
this a ground
сокровенные беседы какие-то проводить?
To
Является
have
основанием?
confidential conversations?
Это
No.
приведет к страданиям немедленно.
It will
сразу.
give you
Или мы
suffering.
вместе, допустим, там
Or, for example,
защищаем город, там мы
we
милиционеры.
are
Или,
policemen and
допустим,
we
мы
protect
вместе.
a city
Является
together.
основанием для сокровенных бесед?
Can we
Нет.
have confidential talks? No.
Или отношения симпатии, еще
Or
сложнее.
there are
Часто
relationships
люди
of
очень сильно
liking.
покрываются на том, что они вместе
People
работают.
make great
Если ты
mistakes
вместе со мной
from working
работаешь, меня не
together.
выслушал, у меня
We work
горе,
together
я
and
тебя больше не
you
люблю,
did not
с тобой
listen
работать
to
не
my
хочу.
problem, so I like
Да?
you no more and I do not
Видите,
want to
мой
work
большой
with you.
вкус, да? Дружба закончилась.
Friendship is over.
Деловые отношения, эти отношения
Business
имеют другую
relationships have
природу.
a different
Это корыстные
nature.
отношения.
They are
Они это отношения
self-interested.
долга. Мы должны просто выполнять свои
That is
обязанности друг
duty.
перед
We
другом.
just
В
perform
каком
our
состоянии
duties before
благодарности.
each other
Это же
with
тоже отношения
gratitude.
любви, но они имеют свои
These are also
ограничения.
loving
То есть
relationships,
я
but
должен
there are
быть благодарен
limitations.
человеку. Я
I
строю
must
с
be
ним
grateful to
отношения,
that person. I have
благодарности.
relationships with him,
И при этом
and at the
всё
same
хорошо.
time, it is all
Допустим,
fine.
ты старше, я младше
For
на
example,
работе.
you are
Значит ли это, что я должен
my boss,
приходить к тебе и
I'm
говорить:
your
«Слушай,
subordinate.
у меня какие-то
Does it
такие
mean that
проблемы в
I
отношениях
come
с
and
женой».
say, oh look,
Значит ли это
I
или
have
нет?
problems with my wife?
Нет.
Is it so? No.
Выполнил свою работу, пошел
You
домой.
do
Желаю
your
счастья
work
этому
and you
человеку.
go
Всё.
home.
Кому надо
Wish
проблемы
happiness
от
to
с
your
женой
boss.
рассказывать?
Whom do you tell about your problems
Или
with
вот
wife?
еще прикол хороший.
Or here's
Человек
another
записался на
trick.
консультации
A
к
person has
психологу.
an appointment with
Чужой
a
человек
psychologist.
совершенно.
He's a
Приходит к нему на
stranger.
консультацию,
You
платит
come,
деньги
you pay
и
money,
открывает свое
and you
сердце
open your heart
чужому
to a
человеку, которого он
stranger
вообще не знает, какой уровень
whom you do
развития,
not know at
благостное у
all.
него
You do not know
развитие
if he is in the
страстное,
mode of
небесное, он не
goodness,
знает, просто
how
написано
developed
психолог. Он
he
приходит
is.
к нему, платит деньги, и
You pay
приходит и
money,
говорит, жизнь
and
у
you
меня
say,
такая.
my life is like this.
Жили мы в избушке глубиной, и
We used
начинает
to
как
live
бы рассказывать
in a
ему
nice
свою
home,
историю жизни.
and there comes the
Кивает
whole
головой,
life
у него
story.
навыки есть, он
The
там
psychologist
что-то вставляет,
nods,
говорит,
he is
там
qualified,
вы
he
заплакали,
makes
он
some
такой,
remarks,
да.
you start to
И это
cry,
всё
and
просто
he is,
техника
yes,
поведения.
but these are
Там
mere
сердце вообще никак не
techniques,
блестит.
heart is not
Просто
involved.
техника. И так как сердце
Some
не
mechanics,
блеснуло, поэтому
and
от Бога
as
совета
there
не
is no
будет.
heart, you will
А
not
раз от
receive
Бога совета
advice
не будет, он
from
вам даст
God.
какие-то внешние вещи.
And that means you
Например,
will only receive some
если
external
вы
advices. For example, if you
ругаетесь на него, то не ругайтесь.
argue, just don't.
А если вы не улыбаетесь, то
And
улыбайтесь.
if you don't smile, then smile.
И в таких случаях хочется всегда дать
And
тоже совет.
in these
Если,
cases, you
допустим,
also want to give an advice.
надо не
For
совет, а просто
example,
на практике
you
испытать
need
этого
to
человека,
test
взять ему
this
в попу, вставить
psychologist.
иголочку.
Insert a needle into his behind.
И он скажет,
And
больно,
he will,
вытащи.
it
А
hurts.
вы улыбаетесь.
And you tell him,
Вам
just
больно,
smile.
а вы
It
улыбаетесь.
hurts, but you
И
smile.
вставлять дальше иголочку.
And you show the needle
Когда
further.
человеку больно, он не может улыбаться.
When the person is hurt,
Просто
he
ему
cannot
больно.
smile because he is
Все эти
hurt.
советы, что
All these
не можешь
advices,
простить, прости.
you can't
Не можешь
forgive,
улыбаться,
then forgive.
улыбайся.
You can smile,
Эти все
just
советы,
smile.
они бессмысленны, потому что
These
они
are
указывают на то,
empty
что человек
advices
не понимает
because they only
силу
indicate
воздействия.
that the
Он не
person
понимает
does
вообще,
not
с чем
feel the
имеет дело.
force of
Вот эти такие
influence.
как бы чисто такие
These
приемчики,
technical
делай то,
advices,
делай
do
это,
this or
они
that,
механические
are
приемчики, они вообще
mechanical.
никогда не
They
работают.
do not work in
Но почему он
practice.
такие советы дает?
But
Потому
why
что он
does he
духовно
give these
неразвитый
advices?
человек.
Because he is
Но почему вы
spiritually
пришли
not
к нему
developed.
советоваться о
Then
сокровенных
why did you
вещах,
come to him
если
to
вы
advise on confidential matters?
не знаете, как он развит?
If
А
you do
потому
not
что вы не
know
знаете,
who
что
that
такое
person
отношения.
is, because you do not know what
Отношения
relationships
это не
are.
то, что можно с
Relationships
каждым человеком строить как
is
угодно.
not something you can have
Близкие
with
отношения можно
anyone.
только с
You
благостным
can only
человеком
have close
строить.
relationships with people in
Открывать
the mode
сердце
of
можно
goodness.
только равному или
And you can
старшему.
only open your
Младшему
heart to
нельзя
your
открывать
peer
сердце.
or
Таким
your
образом,
senior.
рассказывая о своих трудностях
You
и
cannot
проблемах.
tell your minor about your
Даже если
problems and
благостные отношения с
difficulties.
младшим,
Even if
старший не
there are
должен
goodness
открывать сердце,
relationships,
рассказывая о своих
you
проблемах.
cannot do that.
Он должен это делать лучше всего со
It
старшим,
is best
иногда
to
с равным,
do it
который
to
может
your
вести себя как
senior,
старший.
or sometimes with your peer who can act as a senior.
Пример неправильного построения отношений из
An
анекдота.
example of wrong relationships from an
Встречается новый
anecdote.
русский с другом
A
старым,
Russian
он толстый,
fat
тот худой.
businessman meets
Он говорит,
his
«Ты чё
old
такой
thin
худой?»
friend and asks, "Why are you
Тот
so
ему говорит,
thin?"
«Я,
And he
понимаешь,
answers,
не доедаю».
"You see,
Тот
I
посмотрел
eat
на
too
него, говорит,
little."
«Ну, надо себя заставлять».
He looks at him and says, "Well, you must force yourself."
Это какие отношения?
What kind of relationships is that?
Нет
Empty.
никаких отношений.
No
Человек не понял
relationships.
просто, да?
There is a
Не понял, что любовь,
misunderstanding.
потому что
He
нет
does not see that
достаточно
that thin
глубины
person does not
сердца,
have
чтобы
money
понять
to
это
eat,
всё.
because there
Это
is
невежественный
no
человек.
depth of heart to
У
see
него
the
нет понимания,
truth.
что человек может
The
просто
businessman
продать
is in
футбол.
the mode of
Нет
ignorance. He
бизнеса
does not understand that there can be starvation.
Еще более сложно понять
And
отношения
it is even
симпатии.
more complicated to understand relationships
Вот
of
понравился человек.
mutual
У нас с ним
liking.
близкие отношения или нет?
You like someone. Is that close relationships?
Девушка с парнем встретилась,
A girl
и
meets
всё
a
ей
guy
рассказала про свою жизнь ему.
and tells him everything about her life.
Он послушал,
He
согласился,
listened,
да,
he
всё,
agreed.
Все хорошо?
Is it
Пока.
fine? For now.
Нет, все хорошо.
No, it's
Пока.
fine. But for
Есть
now,
симпатия.
there is mutual
А потом,
liking.
когда они поссорились,
But then, when they have a fight,
он ей все и выдал. Говорит,
he
а ты
tells
что
it
делала
all to
до
her.
меня?
And
Помнишь,
what
ты мне
did you do
рассказывала, как ты
before
себя
me?
вела там, там,
Remember, you
там?
told me about your
Я тебя
behavior
замуж
there
взял
and
теперь.
there. I married you now. And
зачем
she's
я
sorry,
это
she told
сказала?
everything.
Как вы думаете, сами по себе
How do you
отношения
think
симпатии
these
или
relationships
влюбленности дают
of
право глубоко
being in
открывать
love or
сердце
of
или нет?
liking,
Вот у нас есть семьи,
do they
допустим,
allow to open your hearts? For example, we have families
чувствуем счастье друг от
and
друга.
we feel
Нам
happiness
хорошо.
with each
Мне
other.
хорошо с тобой.
I feel so
И
well
снегопад,
with
и
you,
дождик проливной.
no matter what the
Является
weather
ли это
is.
основанием открывать сердце или нет?
Is this a reason enough to open your heart? No.
Почему?
Why?
Потому что отношения симпатии
Because
являются
relationships of
отношениями
liking
страсти.
are in the mode
Также
of
деловые
passion,
отношения,
as
отношения
well as
симпатии
business
дают
relationships.
людям какие права. Допустим, если мы друг друга
If
любим,
we
и
love
мы
each
вместе
other
с тобой начали
and
жить, то у нас
we
друг перед другом
start
есть
our life
обязанности.
together, then we
Что
have
это за
duties,
обязанности? Я должна
and
тебе
these
говорить
are:
о том,
I am supposed to be
должна быть
faithful,
верной перед тобой,
and
я
if
должна
I
говорить,
like
что мне
someone
понравилось
else,
тот
I am
мужчина,
supposed
помолись за
to
меня,
tell you
я
about
на
that and
него не
ask to
смотрела.
pray for me, not to look
Об
at
этом
him.
надо говорить. Но есть более
We should
сокровенные
talk
вещи,
about
это
such
отношения
things,
с
but there
Богом,
are more
вера
confidential
человека,
things
его,
like relationships
какие-то
with God,
глубокие чувства,
faith,
переживания,
some
которые
deep feelings
не всегда близкие люди
that
способны услышать
our
и
spouses are not
принять. Почему?
always
Потому что
able to
отношения
hear and to
симпатии и
accept,
чувство счастья,
because
которое я
this
испытываю
feeling
к
of
человеку, не
happiness
является
or
основанием
liking
для того,
is
чтобы
not
считать, что между
basis
нами
enough
есть
to
что-то
think that there
настоящее.
is something real
Это просто
between
влюбленность,
us.
означает
That is
наслаждение
just
друг
being
другом,
in love. It
означает
is
привязанность
mutual
друг к другу,
enjoyment,
но не
attachment,
означает глубину.
but it does not mean
И
depth.
люди часто рушат все
And
свои
people
жизни.
often
Вот,
ruin
допустим,
their lives.
я
For
открыла
example,
сердцу, а он мне
I
потом надо
opened
мной
my heart to
насмеялся.
him, and then he
А чё
laughed
ты
at
ему
me.
открыла сердце?
Why did you
Это не
open your
одни глубокие
heart?
отношения. Отношения
These
симпатии
relationships
находятся в
were not
страсти.
deep.
Даже семья
Liking is
создалась,
in the
это
mode
еще
of
не значит,
passion.
что у
Even
людей
if there
развились
is a
близкие
family,
отношения.
it does not
Это их
mean there are
развить
close
еще надо потом.
relationships. It
Потому
takes
что только люди
time to
благости
have them,
способны на близкие
because
отношения.
only
Люди,
people in the
которые
mode
хотят
of passion
наслаждаться
can
друг
have
другом
close
и жить
relationships,
просто
and those who want to
балдеючи, они не
enjoy
могут
each
строить
other
близкие
and live
отношения по
together
своей природе,
cannot
они
have
всегда
deep
пустые.
relationships.
Они хотят только брать,
They
они
have
хотят
empty
ничего давать.
relationships. They only
Полным
want to
становится тот
take
человек,
and
который
not give.
дает, а не берет. Вот когда ты можешь служить, тогда
When
ты
you can serve,
наполняешься.
then you
Чем?
become full.
Прощением,
You are
способностью
full
прощать,
with ability to
способностью
forgive,
принимать человека
to
и так
accept
далее.
a person,
Поэтому
etc.
даже близкие
So
отношения в
even
семье, имеется в виду
close
родственные
relationships in
отношения, не дают
family,
основания
like
строить
relatives,
глубокие
are
духовные
not
отношения с человеком. Не
basis
дают
enough
такие
to
основания.
have deep spiritual
Это
relationships.
знание является очень важным, потому
This
что
knowledge is
большинство
very
людей
important because
думают,
most people think
что
that
я зря вышла замуж за этого
I
человека.
should not
Он
have
даже не
married
хочет
that
слушать о
person.
том, что
He
я услышала на лекции.
wouldn't even listen to what I heard
Вот
at
сейчас
the
придете
lectures.
домой и скажете,
You
там
come
такая
back home
лекция
now
классная.
and you say, wow, the lecture was great.
И вы увидите холодный взгляд.
And you will see a cold
Какой
look.
может быть?
It can
Какая
be.
лекция?
What lecture?
Зачем тебе это надо?
Why do you need that at all?
Что, тебе не хватает, что ли, еды или
You
чего?
do not
Машины
have
нет?
enough
Чё
food,
тебе
or
не
do you
хватает?
need
Что
a
ты
new
пошла на
car?
лекцию?
Why did you go to that
Понимаете, о чем
lecture?
я говорю или нет?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Блин, да с кем я же вообще живу?
And you think, my God, who do I live
Вы
with?
живете с тем, с кем
You
положено.
live with the person you
Потому что
deserve,
отношения
You
симпатии
are
нужны
supposed to.
человеку в жизни.
because people
Нам
need
здесь не можем жить.
relationships of
Нужны родственные связи,
liking.
нужны
You
отношения.
need
Но для того,
relatives,
чтобы строить близкие
but in
отношения,
order to
открывать
have
свое
close
сердце, говорить о
relationships and to
сокровенных
open your
вещах,
heart
для
and
этого
to
нужно,
tell
чтобы
confidential
человек
things,
находился в благости.
the person must be in the
Благости
mode of
означает
goodness.
в буквальном смысле
And
стремился
that
к Богу,
literally
стремился
means
к духовности,
striving for
стремился к
holiness,
совести,
to
стремился
God,
к
to
чистоте,
consciousness, to
стремился работать
purity,
над собой, учился молитве, учился
self-improvement,
менять себя. Но если
prayer,
человек этим не занимается,
changing
ничего
yourself.
страшного.
But if the person does not do
Значит,
it,
всё впереди.
there is no problem. That means it will be.
Давайте разберем 3 типа отношений в семье.
Let us discuss 3 types of relationships in a
Первый
family. The first
Мы
type,
живем вместе.
we live together,
У нас у
we
каждого
have
своя
lives of
жизнь.
our own.
Каждый занимается своим. Нам
Each
хорошо
one
друг
has
с
his
другом.
life.
Нормально. Нормально.
We like
У
being
него
together.
своя жизнь,
It's
у меня
okay.
своя.
He has his life, I have mine.
Но нам очень трудно
But it is
объяснить
difficult
друг
for
другу
us
что-либо.
to
Мы в основном не общаемся,
speak
не
and to
разговариваем.
explain
Мы
something
говорим
to each
о
other.
детях, о делах, говорим
We talk
о
about children, about business.
чем-то, но если разговор заходит
But
о чем-то
when it
личном,
comes
то
to
превращается в
personal,
скандал всегда.
there is
Допустим,
an
я ему
argument.
пытаюсь объяснить,
For example, I
как со мной
try to
лучше себя
explain
вести, сразу
him
ругань.
how
Лучше не
to
трогать.
behave with me, and there is
Ну,
a
то есть нам
fight.
нормально,
It is
мы
best
сексом
to leave it
занимаемся,
alone.
мы
It's
целуемся,
okay. We have
обнимаемся,
sex, we have
но
kisses and hugs, but we do not discuss deep feelings. We just live together because there is no one else. Well, we have children. These are ignorant relationships. Two hearts are apart there. There is no connection at all. And hearts get connected only when a person decides to change his life. Ignorant relationships appear from ignorant view of your own life. If the person does not want to be in the mode of goodness, if he does not pray, for example, my husband is ignorant. We have ignorant relationships. Why can't I just pray for him every day and make my way into his heart? At once his conscience will start to torment him. He will think that you are a saint. That is conscious. Why do you laugh? Did you have it? Just make your way into your spouse's heart. But if you do not want to do it, you are just as ignorant. Why would I go there? He is such a fool. If you think so, you also are a fool. A good person learns to forgive and to love people close to him, especially if God gave him to you. How can you tell if God gave him? If you have been living together for more than a year, that's it. Sometimes people meet, then they go apart and they barely notice that. And if you ask, who left who? They can't even tell. We just forgot about each other. It's usually just a few months. That means God did not give you that person. But if God gives you, then you cannot leave. Something holds you together. God holds you together, and if you leave, you will be punished. God will give you no one else or someone wrong. Or He will give you something that you will suffer really badly. You are going sad. I must make more jokes. Is everything clear? Now look, it is very important. If there is coldness between us, that means my life is wrong. Because even if your spouse is in the mode of ignorance, but you start spiritual life and change your life, his heart is still melted, and first he becomes grateful, and then his life starts to change. Gradually it all improves, because your spouse is embodiment of your fate. He is embodiment of all your past actions. That is your shadow that follows you. You cannot escape it. If my shadow is scary, that means I lived badly in the past, wrongly. If your spouse behaves terribly, that is your fate. You've deserved it. That's the way you used to live. And some people say, I do not remember my past lives. There is no need to. Look at your relatives. It is all there. These are your past lives in front of you. It's very easy. There are no accidents in this world. Now, relationships that allow people to open their hearts, deep relationships are only between spiritual people, between two comrades. When a person starts to develop spiritually, he can find true friends that will never betray and whom you can speak confidentially to. And your spouse can be such a friend. One husband sang to his wife when he was leaving this world. I'm swimming away and Time takes me from one land to another, from one bank to another. Goodbye, my friend. Just look, without despair. You know this. It is by Rabindranath Tagore, a famous writer in India. But how can you tell this to your spouse? I am going away and time takes me from one land to another. Goodbye, my friend. My love defeats the eternal law of death. My love. Do you understand this? But not everyone are capable of such relationships. Not anyone can say such things to his spouse. In joy. There is no death between spiritually developed people. One of my mentors left his body and left this world. I did not have a feeling of separation. I remember him in my prayer, and it's as if he is right here in front of me. There is no death for people who know there is soul and build relationships of soul. There is no separation. When a spouse leaves, but people had great relationships, there is light memory left. But when there were ignorant relationships, what is there left in the heart? A stone, heavy stone, and the person feels cursed. It is hard for him to live because he did not perform his duty. If these were passionate relationships, the ones of duty, of bringing children up together, there is pain of separation. But if people had goodness relationships, there is bright memory left and protection. Feeling of no separation, they feel that they stay together. They can feel eternity. Do you feel the difference? Heaviness, pain, or eternity and bright memory? Bright memory means remembering all the best. Heaviness means it is difficult. The person cries, "Why did you leave me? It is so hard." That is ignorant relationships. In passion there is pain. And goodness means bright memory, light feeling, kind relationships. Look without despair. Kind feeling, peaceful. Goodness relationships are peaceful. Passionate relationships are emotional. I enjoy. Feelings are involved. I feel so well with you, no matter what the weather is. You enjoy. The tango is back and you are gone. You forgot all that was. They give enjoyment in the mode of passion, separation, and joy and sadness. From sadness to joy, there is long distance, separation and meeting. That is passion. And goodness relationships are peaceful, no separation. There are gratitude, purity, faith. I believe in you, my dear friend, and this faith saves me from death on dark nights. Is it clear? But you must deserve these relationships. It is not easy to have this in your family. You must work hard. There is natural tendency to enjoy each other, but passion means pain and misery. If you expect something from your spouse, what do you receive? Happiness, if there is in your fate. And also you receive suffering when time comes and fate acts through the spouse. And why does he give in to it? Why does he torment me? Because he is also attached to expectations. Expectations plus expectations equals sword of Damocles. For example, you come back from work. By karma, you should suffer. I expect that my wife will greet me and feed me and comfort me, and she expects nice smile and looks because she missed me. I come back home and I see that she is unsatisfied, but I expected satisfaction. Mutual expectations is about who is supposed to give first. All arguments occur for one reason. Who is supposed to give happiness first? We both expect happiness. We paid, where is our happiness? A woman here said that the wife should. Raise your hands, men, who think the same, that the wife should be first. Okay. Raise your hands, women who think that men should give happiness first. Don't be shy. That's great. So, there will be no end to our fights. Endless argument. A woman thinks, how did he dare to raise his hand? A woman should give happiness first? What is that? How can he think that? She's so insolent. She wants her man to give happiness first. And there is no end to it. You cannot do it by turn, because it is also not my turn. First goods, then money. It does not work to take turns. I will give you happiness if you give me happiness first. These are passionate relationships. There will be no end to fights and resentment. And in the mode of goodness, a person just serves and expects no happiness. He only serves. He gives gifts and accepts. He feeds, he cooks, he accepts food. He opens his heart, he says nice things and listens. These are very hard to achieve. It looks easy, but in fact it's not. It is easy to do it to a stranger, for example, to give a pastry to someone in the street, but to entreat your close person is very hard, especially when your relationships are at a boiling point. Remember this, the formula is very easy. Do not expect a thing from your spouse. If you start to serve him, and that is only possible if you have relationships with God in your heart, we are all selfish by nature. But if we start to pray, we have extra force to be selfless, to give something. That is called love, true love. Not being in love, not expectation of enjoyment, but a spiritual feeling. It is original quality of soul, to love. And everyone likes it. That is very special. And we should live like that. And only then close relationships are established. Only in that case. But they are established very slowly. Slowly. You must pray much, forgive, accept, serve. Before, gradually, his heart will open up, there will be voice of conscience, he will start to accept and thank you and to serve you the same. It is very slow and gradual, but it comes for sure. But if you expect, that is not goodness. Goodness is when you just serve. You serve more and more, on, and then the real thing comes. From any person, be he a drunk or a cheater, it does not matter. It just means your fate is like that. There is ignorant fate, is hopeless. Passionate fate is false expectations. We build a house together, we raise kids together. You think that that's going to make you happy, but it does not. Happiness only comes from pure, deep relationships in your hearts. And you can build them one way. When you pray and you forgive your relatives, you can have relationships in your heart with everyone, but on the outside they may not be ready for it. You have relationships in your heart with an ignorant person and you are distanced from them on the outside. With passionate people, you love them in your heart, but outwardly you just perform your duties and you cooperate with them. But no confidential talks about God, about spiritual life. There must be no. In that case, you cannot even reveal your sins to your spouse. For example, you cheated on your husband, and you cannot tell him that, because if he is not in the mode of goodness, he will curse you, he cannot forgive. Only goodness people can forgive, and passionate people can only be angry and hate when they feel bad. Passionate relationships is using each other, exploiting. I like you, I live with you. I don't, goodbye. Passionate people cannot save their families, and as people do not develop spiritually now, we have 80% of divorces in Russia. 80% of people who meet like that get divorced. But these people are not in that 80% because they have a spiritual path. They are in the mode of goodness. I know them, I guarantee. They do spiritual practice, and their personal life will be bright. I've already told them what they will have to put up with in each other. My assistant came here on purpose with me. He suffered on the plane. He's a doctor and he gives free health consultations. Because at my lectures people always ask about hemorrhoids, and so I bring the doctor with me. If you have some problems, go to him. How to increase faith in God? Faith is always based on experience. You cannot just increase your faith. Once in Alma-Ata, I gave a lecture, and there was an even bigger hall, and I saw some noise from out there. I was very curious. I went there, and people stood there and screamed, "God, I love you!" Like that, very loudly. They increased their faith. That is artificial. It does not work. What works is spiritual life. Life works, not something artificial. For example, you have some difficulty in life. You can rely on three things. First, yourself. We were so young,
искренне любили.
and we loved
Как
so
верили в
sincerely,
себя.
and we believed in
Первый
ourselves.
тайм мы уже
We've
отыграли.
already
И
played
всего
the
лишь
first
успели
round,
понять
and
всех
we've
друзей.
only managed
Мы
to
уже
understand.
потеряли.
We've lost all
Постарайся
our
себя не
friends.
терять.
Try not to
Ну, то
lose
есть вера в себя —
yourself.
это невежественная жизнь. Человек только своими
It is
силами
ignorant
побеждает
to
трудности.
believe in yourself.
Дальше. Вера
The second is
в тех, кто имеет силу в
faith
этом
in
мире.
those who
Это
have power
старшие
in this
врачи,
world.
психологи,
These are seniors,
директора
doctors,
заводов. Это лучше.
directors. That's better.
Больше работает система.
It works better.
Если тебя судят, надо не в
If
себя
you
верить,
are
а того,
trialed,
кто может
you
тебя
should not
защитить на
believe in
этом суде.
yourself, but
Это более
in a
разумно.
lawyer. That is more
Но
sensible.
есть еще один способ
But
реагирования.
there is
Параллельно
another
со
way
вторым,
to
то есть защита в
react.
суде нужна все равно, но если ты
You still
помолишься
need
Богу, подумаешь о
a
нем,
lawyer, but
то
if you
тогда
also
произойдет
think
чудо.
about God,
То, что
then miracle will
воспринимаешь как
happen.
то, чего не должно
Because
было
what
быть,
was
по
not
идее, но
supposed to
произошло.
happen happens,
И это дает
and
очень твердое чувство
that
внутреннее.
gives a strong, firm faith inside, a miracle.
Необыкновенное явление.
It
Казани,
is
когда читал лекции, я
extraordinary.
пришел
When
в
I read
собор, есть там
lectures
собор
in
такой,
Kazan,
Казанской Божьей Матери.
there is
Такая
a big
маленькая иконочка,
cathedral, and there is a
и на ней
tiny
куча
icon
серебряных золотых
with a
цепочек,
lot
их
of
постоянно
silver and
снимают
golden
раз в несколько
chains
месяцев.
on
Знаете,
them.
что это за цепочки?
Do you know what these chains
Пусть
are?
погибший человек, который был спасен
A person
от
who
неизлечимого
survived
заболевания,
an incurable disease
когда безвозвратно
or had
разрушается
his
семья, и она
family
возвращается,
saved
когда
when it
ребенок
rejoined,
инвалид вылечивается, и так далее.
when a
Понимаете, когда
child is
вешается вот эта
cured,
цепочка,
then the person
называется
brings a
вера.
chain to this
Когда человек
icon.
испытал
That
в
is
своей жизни
faith.
такую вещь,
When the
он уже
person
не может не верить.
experienced it, he cannot
Он бежит туда,
be
где
a
ему
disbeliever.
помогло. В
He
следующий
comes
раз,
back to
понимаете?
the place
Называется
that
вера.
helped.
Вера
That
это не
is faith.
искусственная вещь, это
It
опыт,
is not
нужен опыт жизни.
artificial.
Чтобы
That
опыт
is
был,
real
нужно для этого
experience.
действовать в этом
And to
направлении.
get it, you must act in this direction.
Можно выйти замуж
There are
тремя
three ways to
способами.
get
Первый
married.
способ.
The first one,
Хочу замуж
I want
и
to get
вышла.
married, and I get
Невежество.
married. Ignorance.
Второй способ.
The second way,
Нашли мужа.
they found me a
Помогли.
husband. They helped
Люди
me.
помогли, добрые.
Kind people
Страсти.
helped.
Третий
That's
способ.
passion.
Молилась Богу.
And the third
Бог
way,
дал человеку.
I prayed to God, and He gave me
Но
a spouse.
помощь людей
That
тоже
is
хорошо.
goodness.
То есть страсть это
But
хорошо.
help from people
Когда
is also
человек
good.
зарабатывает деньги,
Passionate is
это
good.
хорошо.
When a
Но
person
если он
earns
еще при
money,
этом
that's
молится
great.
Богу, тогда он будет
But
счастливым.
if at the same time he prays,
Зарабатывание денег счастья
then
не
he
дает.
becomes happy. Because just money making does not bring happiness.
Счастье — это энергия, возникающая
Happiness
в результате глубоких
comes
отношений.
from deep
Если между
relationships.
сердцами есть отношения,
If there are relationships between
тогда
hearts, then
есть счастье.
there is
Нет
happiness.
отношений,
No
нет
relationships,
счастья.
no
А между
happiness.
страстными людьми не бывает
And there
отношений,
cannot be
взаимоотношений
relationships between
исключены.
passionate
Есть
people.
отношения, основанные на долге, деловые
There are
отношения. Знаете,
business
во многих
relationships
семьях
based
деловые
on duties.
отношения. Мы
You
любим
know,
друг
many
друга,
families
но у
have
тебя
that.
свои деньги, у меня свои.
We love
Это
each other,
любовь или
but
нет?
you have your money and I have
Люди не
mine.
доверяют друг
Is that
другу.
love? People
Что
do
это
not
значит?
trust
Любовь?
each other.
Нет.
Is that
Это
love?
просто деловые
No,
отношения,
these are
основанные на
business
симпатии.
relationships
Я
based on
наслаждаюсь своим телом, ты
mutual
наслаждаешься
liking.
моим телом.
We
Всё.
enjoy each
Тела
other's
состариваются, до
bodies,
свидания.
bodies get old, and goodbye.
Это всё уже.
That's it.
Как рассказать о Боге и научить
How
молиться
can I
ребенка
tell about God
больного
and
аутизмом,
teach to pray an
который
autistic
только
child
частично понимает речь?
who only partly understands speech?
Ребенок больной аутизмом — это такая же
Autistic
душа, как
child
вы.
is a
Любая
soul
душа
just like you.
понимает
Any
молитву.
soul understands
Мы
prayer.
каждое воскресенье проводим
Each
такие
Sunday
занятия,
we
ретриты.
make
То
retreats.
есть я со своими сотрудниками собираюсь
My
в
employees and I,
нерабочее
we
время.
gather
Там уже
in our
нерабочие
free
люди,
time.
там близкие
There
люди.
we are not
И
employees, we
я
are
даю
close
настрой, как
people.
молиться. Все
I
начинают
give them
молиться, а потом мы
meditation on how to
спрашиваем,
pray. We
Ну,
pray
обмен
and then
опытом.
we exchange our
как 6
experience.
часов мы проводим время с
And
утра
so
каждое
we
воскресенье.
spend
С
6
6
hours
утра и
together,
до
6
12.
a.m. to 12 p.m. That is the way we rest, active rest.
И несколько воскресений подряд,
And
когда я
few
начинал читать
Sundays in
молитву,
a row, when I
передо мной
started to
садилась
pray,
муха и сидела
a
неподвижно.
fly landed before me and
Одна
she
и та же муха,
stayed
я
there
ее запомнил.
still. The same fly, I remembered it.
Каждый раз я
Every
начинаю
time I
читать молитву,
started
она
to
прилетает,
pray, it
садится и
landed
слушает.
and it listened.
Вот так, неподвижно.
And it was very still.
Но у мухи вообще
But the
мозгов
fly
нет.
has no
Даже нельзя
brain.
сказать, что она больна
You
аутизмом.
cannot even say that
Потому
it
что
is
как бы нечему
autistic,
болеть аутизмом.
because there is nothing to be
Там
autistic.
только одна душа и крылья, и все.
There is just the soul and wings, nothing
И
else.
она все равно слушает молитву.
And still it
Почему
listened.
вы думаете, что
Why do you
человек,
think
который
that a
получил
living
награду
being
человеческую
that
в форме
was
жизни,
praised
почему он,
with
даже если у него
a
есть
human
нарушения
body,
какие-то в нервной системе,
even though he has
почему он
some
не может
problems
услышать
with
вашу молитву?
the nervous
Просто
system,
начните читать эту молитву.
cannot hear
Начните
your
с
prayer?
сердцем. Если
Just
она есть, это
start
молитва
to pray
настоящая.
in your heart
И
if
кошки,
there
и
is
собаки слушают.
a real
У нас
prayer.
есть собака,
Cats and dogs also listen.
у меня ученики, у них
We
там
have a
дом
dog
большой, они
there.
живут в
My
большом доме,
students
все
live
вместе,
in a
20
big
человек,
house
и их
together,
охраняет
20
собака.
people, and it is guarded by the dog.
И когда мы читаем
And
молитвы,
when we pray,
там есть крыльцо такое,
there
как
is
бы,
a
вход
porch,
такой в
an
дом,
inner
как
porch.
сени, да? Сени. И вообще на улице не
And
слышно, но в
you
сенях
cannot
слышно
hear
молитву.
the prayer
И разок,
outside,
а
but you
ей не
can
положено залазить в
in
сеня,
the
она
inner
ведическая
porch.
собака.
But
Она может
that's
только снаружи
the
жить.
Vedic dog. It is
Она
not
знает, что
supposed to
нельзя
be
внутрь,
in
это
the inner
нехорошо,
porch. It
неправильно.
cannot enter the
Вот и
house.
разок я захожу
That's
в
wrong.
сени, смотрю,
And
сидит
once I go into the
в
inner
уголку
porch and I see it there,
спряталась.
and
Слушает
it
молитву.
hid in the corner and it listens to the
Я
prayer.
говорю, ты что здесь делаешь?
And I ask, what are you doing here? You're not
Я
supposed to be
объясняю,
here.
как
I
старший,
explained it to it like the
Вот,
senior.
она такая уши поджала,
It drew in its ears close to
делает
its
вид, что
head
не слышит меня.
and pretended it did not hear
Знаете,
me.
что потом дальше
What
произошло?
happened next? I took
Я
it
ее
by
беру за
the
шкирку
scruff of its
и
neck
тащу,
and
а
dragged,
она сопротивляется.
and it resisted.
И мне в сердце Бог говорит,
And
оставь её
God
в
in
покое.
my heart
Это
told me
единственный
to
шанс.
leave it alone, that
человека.
was its only chance to become a
Я раз
human.
её отпустил,
I let
она
it
с
go,
благодарностью посмотрела
it
на меня
gratefully looked
и
at me
начала слушать дальше молитву.
and started to listen on to the prayer.
Так если собака слушает
If
молитву,
the
почему
dog
человек не
listens
может?
to the prayer, why the human
Я не
cannot?
вижу проблем, хоть
I see no
аутизмом больной
problem,
ребенок, хоть нет, понимаете?
Be that
Если
autistic
у
child
человека
or
есть
not,
какие-то трудности
if a
восприятия
person
мира,
has
то у него
difficulties
душевное
with
чувство
world
обостряется в
perception,
десятки
then
раз.
his
Если человек
soul
слепой,
feeling is
душевное
times
чувство
stronger.
его
If
обостряется
the
в 1000
person
раз,
is
чем у
blind,
обычного человека.
his
Потому
soul
что ему
feeling
радости
is
этого мира
10
не хватает,
times
ему нужно заменить
stronger.
их, и он тогда
He
заменяет
cannot
их на
enjoy
душевные
this world,
радости.
and
Так у
it
него
is
больше
replaced
счастья, чем у
with
нас.
happiness of the
Потому что
soul.
настоящее счастье
And
только через
that
сердце
means he
приходит.
is
Оно не
times
может вот
more
через это
happy.
вот происходить.
True happiness
Настоящее
only comes
счастье
from
глубокое
heart
приходит
and
только
not
через
from
сердце.
outside.
Если человек лишен
And
какого-то
if
чувства, у него
the
больше
person is
шансов
deprived of
получить
some
отношения с
sense,
Богом,
he
чем у нас
has
с вами.
much more
Поэтому
chances
любое
to
лишение
obtain
является
relationships
также
with
наградой,
God.
но мы об этом не знаем.
Any
И этот ребенок,
deprivation
который
is a
аутизмом, на самом
reward.
деле также
And
имеет
your
такую возможность
autistic
этой
child
награды, если вы
also
начнете рядом с
has
ним
a
заниматься
chance at
духовной
this
практикой,
gift if
а
you
не плакать
start
за его судьбу.
spiritual practice next to him instead of
В
crying
этом
for him.
заключается только разница. Мы с мужем
My
вместе
husband
8
and
лет,
I
у
have
нас
been
двое
together
детей,
for
второй
8
год
years. We
сложные
have
отношения.
2 children.
Это обычно так бывает.
It's been hard for over a year.
Унижает меня,
He constantly
были
humiliates me.
измены,
He cheated on
после
me.
которых я все равно простила, пыталась
But I
дальше
still
строить
forgave
отношения.
him and I
Теперь
tried
начал
to build
поднимать
relationships.
руки,
But now he is
просит
beating me.
прощения,
He
обещает
says he is
измениться.
sorry. He promises
Стоит
to
ли верить и
change.
прощать, что делать в
Should
этой
I
ситуации?
believe and forgive? What is there to do?
Хороший вопрос по теме.
That is a good
Первое,
question
что
on
мы
the topic.
диагностируем. Отношения
The first thing we
находятся на
see
уровне
is that
невежества.
relationships are in
Смотрите,
the
отношения
mode of goodness.
строятся в невежестве.
Why is it
Почему?
so?
Потому что такова ее
Because
судьба.
that is
То
her
есть по судьбе ей
fate.
положены такие
She
отношения.
was destined to have such
Если
relationships.
бы вы видели прошлое этого
If you
человека,
saw
вы бы
her
убедились в
past,
том,
you
что
would
я
have
говорю
been
правду.
sure I tell the truth.
Но я изучаю всю жизнь
But
эту
I
тему, я
have
знаю
been
точно, что
studying
так
this
положено.
matter my
В
whole
этом нет
life.
сомнений,
I
вы должны
know for
просто принять
certain
мои
that
слова.
is what was
Если
supposed to
этот человек
happen.
так себя ведет, значит,
If the
она
husband
сама так
behaves
себя
like
когда-то
this,
вела в
then
прошлой жизни.
she behaved like that in her past
Первое,
life.
что нужно понять.
This is the first thing you must
Неверные
know.
отношения означает шлейф, который идет
Ignorant
с прошлого.
relationships
Это
come
то, что
from your
просто
past
положено
life.
человеку, и всё. Это
That
первое,
is
что нужно
fate.
понять. Второе, что нужно понять,
The second
это то,
thing
что человек
is
просто живет неправильной жизнью в целом.
that the person lives wrong in general, because even if you're supposed to have an ignorant husband, you will not suffer from it. For example, Vanga's husband was a drunk, but she forgave him and she loved him, and he loved her back. If a person has exalted life, then he does not suffer from his past life, because you can always forgive, but there is more work for you. For example, floors in my home get dirty all the time. Should I hang myself? No, that is just more work. Or for example, I have an iron frying pan and you Teflon. It is easy for you to wash it, and I have to work really much. Is it a reason enough to get hanged? No, it's your fate. You should work more and clean more. You accept it and you work. It's the same in the family. Sometimes you get a husband in a mode of goodness and sometimes ignorance. It depends on your fate. You do not believe me? Raise your hands. You will surely have a goodness husband. There is only one option for you. Please pass the microphone. She does not believe. Don't be scared. I just want to understand what you mean. Because you are an honest person. There are many more who do not believe, but they don't say. People do not believe they will have suffering in their life. I do not believe that I'm supposed to put up with that person. There is an exception to its rule. I agree with you. Did I say that she's supposed to put up with him, to tolerate? Well, I felt like that. Did anyone else understand it like that? This dialogue is a bit premature. If there is an ignorant person next to you, you do not have to put up with him. You must pick correct distance in relationships, and if that distance is too big for your apartment, you should live separately, but not divorce, because you cannot escape your fate. You must correct it. You must wish him happiness and forgive. But you do not have to tolerate. You can live separately. It is not sinful to live separately, but you should not look for someone new. Why do you laugh? You disagree. Let's talk. I want to talk with you. You do not want to? Oh, she does want to. Pass the microphone. Who is brave here? Thank you. No one else would talk to me. My husband applied for divorce himself. Does this mean that the woman has worked her karma off? Well, that's great, he did it himself. Am I mistaken? Why did he apply for divorce? He fell in love with another. He fell in love and he applied for divorce. What did you do? Then he got scared. He came back to you and... Do you live separately? Did you kick him out? I decided I had worked my karma off. You had worked it off and sent him back to where he came from. Please come back. It's so hard for me. You do not want to have anything to do with him anymore. Why is that? Sometimes when there is ignorant fate, the person chooses loneliness, heavy karma, ignorant. Did you remarry? You do not want to? That's okay. There is renunciation. That means that she did not leave him, she just stayed alone. She does spiritual practice and thinks of God. That is renunciation. That is not a divorce. We live separately, you do what you want, and I pray to God. It's okay. But it is a difficult path. There is an easier one. You live separately and you say, I am your husband. If you want to live with me again, prove that you change. I give you lectures, you listen. We'll meet in a week and discuss what you've heard. If he replies, I do not want any lectures, I want to live with you, then you reply, live separately for a while. When you decide to live together, we will improve ourselves and associate little by little. Nothing has changed. You lived like strangers and enjoyed each other, and once enjoyment was over, you were strangers that could not enjoy each other. But when there is no enjoyment, there is animosity. And when there is enjoyment, that is called happiness. But in both cases, there were no relationships. You were strangers to each other, because close people do not leave each other, and they do not cheat. Life in goodness means absence of these things. And if a person makes mistake in goodness and his senses force him to cheat, then in the next moment he is repentant and he is forgiven, because goodness implies both ability of a heart to repent and to forgive. But if it's like, he left, good riddance, he came back, well, I don't care, that means there was nothing between you. I had no sadness, but the summer was over. You and I do not know ourselves what it was between us. You see, that means you lived wrongly. That is the conclusion. But now you should not worry about that. Now you should start to live right. If you got separated, not all is lost. You just make an effort. You must be repentant, so that your life went back to right. You must be repentant and clear the action that you did with repentance. This thing that you did made your heart cold, and it is very difficult for a woman to live alone. Her heart must be warm. Now you are cold, your heart is cold, and you have no family, no personal life. You must be repentant and pray. I do it. It is still cold. I feel coldness in your heart. You must do it more. Time will come and it all will be fine. Your heart will melt and you will have a good life. But as it is hard to do, it is advised not to break, but to forgive and to pick correct distance. But as many of you understood me wrong, you made wrong conclusions. A person in the mode of goodness does not suffer from relationships. He chooses correct distance. He keeps an ignorant person far from him. But if it's a passionate person, we live together, we perform our duties, but we have no expectations. Passionate life is we build a house together, we have kids, we raise them, but no expectations. There is no depth in these relationships, just living together. But depth means that we think of God, prayer, we forgive and we ask for forgiveness, we have spiritual conversations, we are repentant, we open our heart, we make gifts very sincerely, we bless each other and accept blessings. Yes, please pass the microphone. And if, for example, with such a person, you pray and you are supposed to give all the fruits to that person, you see, this is a practical question. You pray, and what do you mean by the fruits of your work? In one lecture you said that you should give all the fruits to your child or someone. So you prayed, you got some power, and you bless someone for health, for example. I pray and I give it all away to my husband. It's fine. In spiritual life, the mathematics is different. 1 minus 1 equals 2. If you give something spiritual away, you have twice more left. Our experience is different. We give away a coin and we have no left. But instead you have 2. When you smile to someone, he smiles back and you smile back, and on and on. Share your smile, and it will surely come back to you many times. Another question. I have a conflict in my heart. I read a Christian prayer and now it's mantras and I do not know what is right, how to do it right. You have no faith and you have no conflict. I'll explain it. When a person believes in God, that means nothing changes. Do you have a mother? Do you believe that that is your mother? Can you have another mother? That's it. It's easy. If you recognize God in some spiritual tradition, there are no other options for you. But I'm drawn both there and there. That means you have not recognized God yet. So pray as you can. Do this and do that. Try it. Search in different traditions. You can try Muslim, Jerusalem, Christian. Search for your faith. When a person finds his faith, he cannot change it. That's impossible. When the person believes in God, that is unchangeable. It is so deep, and there is so much happiness in it, that the person cannot refuse it. It is not like changing one boyfriend for another. It's different. It's a different level of purity, depth, and life. For a person, it is easier to commit suicide than to change his faith. It's impossible. Search on. I can neither confirm nor reject, because it is your search. One girl approached me and she asked, Oleg Ignazievich, please, select faith for me. I asked her, are you married? No. First, I'm going to select a husband for you. Young man here, are you married? No. This is your wife here. She came up to him, looked, and she said, I disagree with it, Oleg Gennadievich, but if you cannot accept the husband from me, that is only temporary for your life, but you want to accept faith from me, that is given for many lives, for eternity. Only a person himself can select his faith, and you should never impose faith on anyone. All faiths that go from the scriptures are good. If the scripture is time-proven, if it's existed for thousands of years, then it's reliable. If there are saints in that religion, that is right. Holiness and light is only there where holy people are. If the faith changes hearts of people, then it is right. All faiths that come from the scriptures are right, and people who have their faith and hate all other are underdeveloped. They do not know how this world works. On the topic relationships, please pass the microphone. Faith is a more elevated topic, it is more difficult. My husband and I have been living together for 40 years in the modes of passion and ignorance. We have 3 children. It's okay, like everybody else. But then you separated. We live in different parts of a house. That means you did not separate, but there is a fence between us. A fence. And there is a grandchild. He comes and he associates with me, then with my husband, and he's like a mediator. You receive happiness through your grandchild. Our relationships were so heavy that we had to part. There was physical violence and moral. No respect left. And now I just learned to build human relationships. Well, that's great. After all, you did not separate. How should I feel about this situation? He cannot be close to me. Suppose a child comes to the senior school and asks about higher mathematics. What is the answer? Is this your first time at the lecture? No? I heard almost all your lectures. All? I have not heard all my lectures, there are so many. Okay, then let's speak seriously. Please listen attentively. A close person is the amount of your work. There are no relationships. Relationships mean that your hearts are connected. But if there is so much dirt between you that you cannot see each other or listen to each other, that means that your whole life you accumulated this dirt. You had no relationships. Relationships only come from true love. Real relationships means that you wish the person happiness in your heart. Love is not sleeping together. That is entertaining. That is exploiting love. Love really comes from the inside, never from the outside. Yes, you lived in passion, but now start to live normally. You think very interesting. You tell me, Oleg Gennadievich, should I kiss him or no? Then what is it? I'm not going to have close relationships with him.
Вот вы со
Why
мной
not?
строите близкие отношения?
You establish close relationships with me now.
А?
On some level I do,
А вот что, есть другие
and
какие-то
other
близкие отношения?
some more close relationships.
Если два кузнечика вместе
If
подергались,
two
у них близкие
grasshopper
отношения были, нет?
made together, was
Как вам
that
вопрос?
close
Два
relationships?
кузнечика вместе подергались,
Two
появился
grasshoppers
еще один
humped, and
кузнечик.
there is
У них
a
близкие отношения
third
были или нет?
grasshopper. Whether close relationships?
Были.
Yes.
Глупенькая.
You are so stupid.
Нет никаких близких отношений. Просто
These
два
were
тела
not close
подергались вместе,
relationships,
всё, появился
just
кузнечик.
two-body meeting.
Близкие отношения
Close
это
relationships
другое.
is something
У меня
different.
к вам вопрос, не отклоняйтесь.
I
Вы со мной
ask
близкие
you,
отношения
are you
строите?
building close relationships with me?
А?
At some level, of course. But what other levels are there? We are souls. Do we have some other close relationships?
Вот шарик может быть танком или нет?
Can a balloon be a tank?
Так и душа может только духовные отношения
And
строить.
similarly, a soul can only have spiritual relationships.
И если это понять,
And if you
то
understand
если вы
it,
со мной с чужим
then
человеком строите
if you
близкие
establish
отношения,
close
слушая мои
relationships
лекции,
with me, with a stranger, just by
то
listening to my lectures,
почему бы вам не быть
then why
благодарной
can't you
этому
be
человеку за
grateful
то, что он прожил с
to
вами
your
40
husband
лет?
who lived with you for 40 years?
Просто взять и
Just
начать
start
строить в своем сердце
close
с ним близкие
relationships in
отношения.
your heart with him.
Желать ему счастья,
Wish him happiness,
прощать,
forgive him,
просить прощения.
ask for
Что?
forgiveness.
Это пробовал,
I
это
tried
не
to.
ответ. Это не
You
ответ.
tried
Вы не
is not
понимаете,
an
о чем речь
answer. You do
вообще.
not understand what I am talking
Вы
about
не
at all.
понимаете, что
You
не
do not
имеет
understand
значения,
that
вы
it
живете
does
за
not matter
стенкой или
if
не
you
за
live
стенкой. Вы
behind
просто
the wall or not.
попробуйте жить правильно,
Just try to
по-человечески.
live right like a
По-человечески
human.
это означает прощать,
And
просить
it means to
прощения,
forgive and to ask for
желать счастья
forgiveness, to wish
человеку,
happiness
понимаете,
to that
неважно,
person.
сколько грязи между
It does
вами
not matter
накопилось.
how
Вы
much
говорите,
dirt
он
there
мне
is between
испортил
you.
всю жизнь.
You
Он
say
вам
that he
не
ruined
портил
your
жизнь.
life, but he
Жизнь
did not.
испортила та грязь, которую вы
It
не
is the
выметали
dirt
из этих
that ruined
отношений.
it, that you did not
Воняет
clean.
не человек, воняет ваши
Your husband
отношения.
does not stink.
Я
It
могу
is
вам
your
сейчас это
relationships,
доказать. Хотите?
and I can prove it to you.
Этот человек добрый.
That person is kind.
Так или нет?
Is he not?
Добрый, так. Так,
Yes, he is
спокойно, не
kind.
надо его сейчас критиковать.
Calm down, do
Он
not
добрый.
criticize him.
Так?
He is
Вдохните
kind.
глубже.
Breathe deeper.
Добрый? Добрый. Так.
That's good.
Добрый.
He is
Так,
kind.
хорошо.
Okay,
Двигаемся
let's
дальше.
move on.
Снисходительный.
He is indulgent.
Отмечаю его качество.
I am listing his qualities.
Ну как?
No.
Что, не прощал вам никогда?
Has he never forgiven you? Well, he did. But there were very many remarks. I'm not talking about remarks. I describe his soul now. I feel him.
Душа снисходительная.
He is kind and indulgent.
Он же снисходительный.
Remember when he was young.
А как?
He was even cruel to some extent.
Твердый, значит, он человек.
Then he is hard. A tough person. No. He is a bit cruel.
Мы говорим сейчас о душе.
We
Душа
are
не может
talking
быть
about his
жестокой.
soul.
Душа
Soul
имеет
cannot be cruel.
грани какие-то. В результате невежества человек...
The soul has
эти,
some facets,
человек эти
but
грани, вот, допустим, твердость
in
превращается в
ignorance,
жестокость. Твердость —
for
это
example,
святость, святое качество.
toughness turns into
У него есть
cruelty.
и твердость, у него есть и
Your husband
снисходительность, и
is
доброта.
tough
Но
and
вы этого всего
indulgent
про него не
and
знаете, а я
kind,
знаю.
but you do not know all these things, but I do. You know why?
Потому что я сейчас
Because
с
now
любовью о нем думаю.
I think about
А
him
вы
with
даже
love,
мысли такой в своем сердце
and
допустить не
you
можете.
cannot even have this thought in your heart.
Но поймите такую вещь, что если
Please
вы
understand,
близкому человеку не можете
if you
допустить
cannot
мысли,
fathom to give love to your close person,
тогда о
then
какой жизни и о каком
what
счастье вы
life
вообще
and
здесь
what
планируете
happiness
в этом мире?
are you expecting in this world? What do you count on? I do not know. Me neither. If you want to live on this earth and to live at all in this world, first you must learn to wish happiness to that person, to forgive and to ask for forgiveness. When you do it, you will work off all heavy things that were between you. And then you will learn something that I am scared to tell you now. You are ready, are you sure? It will be painful to hear. You are not separated from that person. I can feel it. God kept you together, but because of your ignorance, you do not know that. When you work off all the bad things there were between you, suddenly the fence between you will be gone, and you will happily live together. You see, I did not want to tell you this. I agree with you, Oleg Gennadievich, completely. If it will be like that, depends on if you will clean your relationships. You have a beautiful tile floor, covered in dirt. I do not know if it's going to be clean and beautiful again. It depends on whether you are able to wash it. But if you say that you want another kitchen, then that is crazy. You can only get another kitchen when yours is clean. I'm not speaking about going to bed with him. This is external. We are talking about relationships, and they are only in the heart. If you can learn this lesson, then you will overcome all your suffering. Pray to God to have strength to love, because what you had before without God, there was no love at all. You just got dirt, and there is so much dirt now that it is unbearable to think about it. Don't think about it. When the person washes the floors, he must not be bothered, he just washes. Start thinking about God, and when you feel inspiration in relationships with God, with holiness, with a saint, it is hard to think about God at once. It is easier to think about a saint, spiritual music or prayer. It is easier to see God reflected. If you look directly at the sun, you can burn your eyes. But to look at this world shined by the sun is easier. You should have relationships with holiness. These are scriptures, icons, holy places, etc. Pray to this holiness and remember your close person, your spouse. And when you do, first you will feel stone in your heart. It will take a year or two, and the stone will melt. And at some point there will be lightness and calmness in your heart. And then God decides if you should live together. If not, God will give you someone else. The person is never left alone if he had passed his exams in life. But now I'm going to tell you 3 options of your behavior. A person always has 3 paths in life, like in that fairy tale. You take the first path, you lose yourself. The second, you lose your horse. And the third, you gain happiness. The first path. If when thinking about that person you sincerely believe that it is all his fault, you are going to lose yourself in these relationships, because you think ignorantly about him. Different people are tools in the hands of our fate. This is your fate. that gave you this
Если вы
test.
будете думать, что
If you will think that
это
it
мы
is
виноваты,
our fault,
потеряете
you're
отношения.
going to lose relationships.
Это страсть.
That is passion.
А если вы будете думать, я
But
во всем
if
виноват,
you think that you are guilty,
счастье.
you will gain
Это
happiness.
самое тяжелое, идти правильной
It
дорогой.
is the hardest thing to do, to take the right path.
И он сам
Because
будет
what he is guilty
Это
in,
его
that
выбор.
is his life
А
and
ваша
his
мысль, я
thoughts.
виноват.
And you must think that you are guilty.
А?
I am close to this solution.
Я не сомневаюсь в этом.
I have no doubts about that.
Вы очень сильная личность.
You are a very strong person.
Несмотря на трудности, вы
Despite
начали диалог со мной.
difficulties, you
Вы
started
сами
this
меня
conversation
начали,
with
я
me.
вас не заставлял.
I did not force
Это
you.
означает, что у вас
You
очень много
volunteered.
силы,
That
сильная
means
личность.
your spirit
Всё,
is
что я вам
strong.
сейчас сказал, не каждый
Not
человек может выслушать.
everyone
Все
can
выслушали,
bear
даже
what
согласились.
I've just told you, but you
Конечно,
listened
вы
and you
близки к
agreed.
правильному пониманию, без
Of
всякого
course, you are
сомнения.
close to the
Я
right
больше того
understanding.
вижу просветление в вашем сердце.
I even see
Вижу, что эти
some
отношения
bright spot in your heart. I see that these relationships
очиститесь от этой грязи всей. Они станут
will be
чистыми.
purified.
Эти отношения могут быть дальше так продолжаться. Вы можете
And it can go on like this. You will live like neighbors and be happy about that person.
Не обязательно при этом жить
You
вместе.
do not have to
Люди
live
иногда живут
together.
вместе,
Sometimes
близкие, а иногда не
close
живут.
people
Но
live
если они в
together,
сердцах
sometimes
построили
not.
отношения, они
But if
испытывают
they have
счастье друг от
relationships in
друга,
their
потом
heart,
всё равно.
they feel
Вот, допустим,
happiness
приведу пример.
from each other. Here is an
Два
example.
человека прожили вместе 10 лет.
Two people
Один
lived
другого
together
бросил
for 10
и
years.
женился заново.
One left another and remarried. For
Или
example,
этот человек сам же, который бросил,
the one who
он
left
раскаивался,
was
молился,
repentant
просил
and
прощения,
prayed,
и постепенно
asked
вот
for
этот
forgiveness,
груз грехов
and
своих,
gradually
грязи,
he
убрал
was
из
free
отношений.
from
И
sins
чистое,
and
светлое
dirt
чувство
in
возникло
relationships,
к человеку,
and there
который
was
с ним был
bright,
рядом.
clear feeling in his
У меня к вам
heart
вопрос.
to the person who used to be with him.
У него с ним близкие отношения
Does
или
he
нет?
have close relationships with that person?
Да, близкие отношения.
Close
Но это не
relationships.
значит, что он
But
должен с
that
ней
does
жить
not
вместе.
mean that they live
Понимаете,
together.
близкие или духовные, сердечные отношения,
Spiritual,
отношения
close
любви,
relationships
они, это
of
не
love
обязательно отношения, в
are
которых мы
not
должны
necessarily
склеиться. Вот некоторые
the
люди
ones
думают,
when
что
we
если
have
я
to be
молюсь
close
за него,
to
желаю
each
ему
other.
счастья, то
Some
теперь
people
опять
think
судьба
that
его
if
меня
I
ко
pray
мне
for that
приклеит.
person, then
Нет,
fate will
просто
bring him back
чистое,
to
светлое
me.
чувство возникнет
No,
к этому
there is
человеку.
just bright
Счастье,
feeling inside,
спасибо, судьбе,
happiness,
что ты мне дала
gratitude
такой
to
экзамен,
fate
я много
for
поняла через
that
эти
exam,
отношения. И спокойствие,
and there is
желание
peace.
счастья этому человеку,
You
благодарность
wish
за
happiness
всё.
to that person, you are grateful to him.
Светлая память.
Bright
Спасибо за
memory, thank you
Спасибо
for
за всё.
everything.
Но если вы захотите,
But
и
if
у
you
вас
want
между вами
to,
такие чистые отношения,
and you
и
have
Бог
pure
вас не
relationships,
разлучил,
and
если вы
God
захотите,
did not
вы
separate
можете
you,
жить вместе. Если
if
вы
you want
захотите,
to, you
никто вас
can
заставлять не
live
будет.
together
Бог будет
again,
вас
but
заставлять.
no one will
Но
force
если вы
you.
захотите, можете жить вместе.
Time will show.
Я сейчас не говорю о
I'm not
них, как
speaking
ничего,
about
ничего
the
не
future
буду, вас не
at
заставляю к
all,
ответу.
and I
Я просто
do
вам
not force
объясняю
you.
разные
I
варианты
just
жизни.
explain to you your
Вас
options,
это не касается никак.
and it is not about
Никто вас не
you.
принуждает жить с этим человеком.
No one
Я вам
forces
просто
you to live with
объясняю,
that
что любовь
person. I explain
это
to
не
you
означает, что
that
надо
love
склеиваться.
does not mean that you must
Любовь,
be
она
physically
всегда
close.
существует к тому человеку, с которым
There
ты
is
имел
always
близкие
love for
отношения.
the person you
Или
had
любовь,
close
или
relationships
злоба на
with,
него. Почему злоба?
either
Потому что
love
ты
or
экзамен не сдал,
anger.
грязь
If
не
you fail
вымыл,
your exams,
Бог в
if
твоем
it is
сердце
still
недоволен
dirty
и
and God in your
заставляет
heart
тебя на него
is
злиться,
unsatisfied,
это означает, что ты проклятый человек,
then you are
проклятый.
cursed and
Потому
there
что
is
когда
anger
ты
in your heart.
простил, прощаешь,
Because when
чистая
you
память о человеке
forgive
осталась, что
and
это
you have
значит?
bright memory about that person,
Экзамен сдан,
that means
всё
that
хорошо.
you've passed the exam. There is not anger, but
Спокойствие
peace
будет.
inside. No.
Значит, вы что-то
Peace is
делали,
much
молились,
better. That means you did some work, you prayed.
Пора заканчивать, да, лекцию, я смотрю, уже люди уходят.
I see it's time
Я ведь
to
остановиться-то не
finish
могу
the
сам.
lecture. I cannot stop on my own. I need help.
А? Жалость человеку испытываешь.
There is pity to the person.
Жалость человеку испытываешь.
You feel pity, you are sorry. That's good.
Вы желаете ему счастья?
You wish him happiness.
Ну, желайте счастья.
Do it.
Жалко означает, что вы ему что-то должны.
If there is pity, then it means
Но
that
давайте
you
ему
owe
счастье.
him. Give him happiness.
То есть вас тянет вернуться, да? Жалко означает
You
вернуться.
feel like coming back.
Нет? А что?
No? Then what is it?
А? У вас общий ребенок. Ну,
You
хорошо,
have a
желайте ему
mutual
счастья,
child.
светлое чувство, культивируйте к
Good.
этому
Wish him
человеку.
happiness.
Надо микрофон. Вот на первый ряд, на первый ряд.
The microphone to the front row.
Сейчас мы закончим эту беседу и дальше будем
Let's finish
желать всем
this
счастья,
conversation
потом
and then we will wish
я
happiness.
думаю, что первая лекция у нас дала свой результат.
I think
Свою
that
тему. Да?
the first lecture was fruitful. We opened the topic.
Да?
My husband left me for another woman, and I was glad, but I saw that my daughter suffered badly. And I forgave him.
Мгм. Светлая
Do you
память
have bright
осталась?
memory about him?
Да. Светлая память осталась?
Do you have a bright
Всё,
memory?
всё нормально?
That
Всё,
means
вопрос?
everything is fine. What's the question?
Ближе, ближе микрофончик.
I met someone.
Как? Ну, хорошо, нормально.
That's good,
Ну, отлично. А?
but he died. How is that?
Как умер? Не может человек умереть?
He left
Да,
his body.
хорошо.
Yes?
Когда человек отработал карму с кем-то, он это очень
When a
хорошо
person
понимает.
worked his karma off with someone, it is very clear. There is bright feeling about him and there are no problems, just peace and happiness from that relationships. The heart is calm.
Ну, желайте ему счастья, если жалко.
Wish him
Разве это
happiness
плохо?
if you are sorry for
Мне
him.
жалко вас стало, я с вами общаюсь.
I am sorry for you and I speak to you now.
Ну, нормально, в чем проблема тогда?
That's
Почему у вас
okay.
вопрос возникает?
What's your question? I guess I don't have it anymore.
Ну,
May I ask you something?
как? Пока никуда не ушел.
He
нуждается
did
в
not leave.
молитвах ваших,
He needs your
заботах.
prayer.
Продолжайте.
Go on praying.
Когда человек делает все правильно, у него в сердце
When a
возникает
person does
спокойствие,
everything
радость. У вас
right,
есть
his
спокойствие,
heart
радость?
is peaceful and happy. Do you have it? If
Значит,
not,
вы всё
you do
правильно
not do
делаете,
it right,
старайтесь.
but do your best.
Итак,
So,
тема очень
this
сложная.
topic is very
Я надеюсь, что мы
complicated.
чуть-чуть её
I hope
раскрыли,
that
да?
we
Тема
worked
взаимоотношений
it a
самая
bit.
сложная и глубокая тема в нашей жизни.
relationships is the
Сейчас у нас
deepest
будет
and
тренинг.
most
У нас
sophisticated topic
заканчивается
in our
лекция,
life.
мы сейчас
Now we are
немножко
going to have a training.
строить отношения.
We will
Это древняя
train
такая
to build
практика,
relationships.
она не связана с
This is
какой-либо
an
традицией,
ancient
духовной
practice.
религией.
It is not connected to
Практика
any
пожелания
spiritual
всем счастья.
tradition. We are going to wish happiness.
Нужно вспомнить
You must
свою
remember
веру,
your
святость,
faith,
какое-то что-то
some
святое,
holiness,
что-то
something saintly.
что-то святое вспомнить.
Remember something
Мысленно
holy.
кланяться святости.
Bow down to it in your
Стать
mind
передатчиком этой
and
чистоты другим
become
людям.
the transmitter of this purity to other people.
Всем
And
счастья.
say, I wish
Не от
everyone
своего имени,
happiness,
а от имени
not
того,
in
что
your
вы
name, but in the name of what you remember.
вспомните, и повторяйте.
Remember
Я
it
желаю
and
всем счастья от
chant,
его имени.
I wish everyone
Когда человек
happiness
начинает так действовать,
on its
то
behalf.
это очень сильная позиция внутри.
When a person does it, it is a very strong inner position. It allows you to defeat your fate.
Через него, когда
When you
эта сила
meditate
идет,
like this,
счастье на других людей,
when this
он
happiness goes through you
начинает
to
чувствовать
other
внутри
people,
себя вот эту
You start to feel this force inside, and you understand your nature, your inner force. You become calm in your heart, then knowledge comes of how to live, and then faith. You believe in your path. You can use this practice in any religious culture. If you pray like this, you should do like that. First you remember holiness. I want to serve you. I want to serve you. You can follow instructions. You can wish everyone happiness. You can think about philosophy. You can think of the truth. It is all service to holiness, but in this case we pick this path. I wish everyone happiness. We remember holiness and pass it on. When the person does this, he receives 10 times more of it. The Vedas say that when the person forgets about his happiness and serves others, he becomes happy. But when the person expects happiness, he is never going to get it. Happiness is independent, it belongs to God. If the person expects happiness, he becomes miserable. If you give happiness, you become happy. You should learn to give. It is difficult, but it is the only path. Please sit straight and focus. Our goal is not to babble, but to remember. Remember holiness and chant with a feeling, like these newlyweds. They said it with feeling, I love you. And we say, I wish everyone happiness. I wish everyone happiness. I wish everyone happiness. I wish everyone happiness.
Я желаю всем счастья. 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 Желаю всем счастья. Я 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 желаю всем счастья. Всем счастья. Желаю всем счастья. Я 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 желаю всем счастья.
Thank you very much. I wish happiness to all of you, love and all the brightest in your life. I'm very grateful to you for being with me all this time, for listening to me attentively. Thank you.